be weird for me because I'm usually the one that's in the aisle with the camera and trying to blend in with the carpet. So bear with me, I'm not used to being on stage. Like Mary said, I'm from the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, where it is really hot right now, and so that's why I'm really cold here. Because I'm shivering, that's why. I'm sure some of you who are tweeting might have seen me kind of going away with my USC Global Health handle. We're all over social media, I'm all about it. I know many of you are probably also as well. So shameless self-promotion, please follow me. Or not me, our institute. So the Institute for Global Health is kind of a cross-campus organization at the University of Southern California. We're positioned in the Keck School of Medicine, but we also work with people from all over both campuses, and also students of all different disciplines and degrees and everything. So it's really fun. So the first thing I'm going to do are kind of give you some advice coming from a university staff member. I'm probably the kind of weirdo person here because I'm technically still a student, but I'm a writing graduate student, and it's a very bizarre degree program. I'm sure you've never heard of it. It's called an NPW. So, but my main job is as a staff member at IGH, we call it. So I have a couple tips just so you guys can start thinking about orienting yourselves on campus as advocates. And I know you guys are also passionate. I've learned so much from you guys in these last couple days. So as a staff member, I manage the communications, and I often deal with students and organizations coming to me trying to get their word out about their initiatives, their events, their causes. And I have some suggestions for you guys to kind of take advantage right now before you even begin with any kind of big campaign. This is just some preparatory work. Listservs. So are any of you guys subscribed to any listservs or emails, newsletters, or anything that kind of pop up in your email regularly? Yeah. Do you guys ever read them? Right. I put together newsletters for my organization, and it's actually a really helpful tool to kind of use these newsletters as your kind of assisted communication channels. So what I would recommend you do is find any school or program on campus, even other student organizations that have newsletters, subscribe to them, and then email the person that puts it out and say, hey, do you mind if I send you a couple blurbs or something about our next event or next campaign? Even if it's very last minute, say, is there any space in the next newsletter I want to put this in? And you'll be surprised by how many more people you can reach that way, just kind of doing grassroots newsletter outreach. So, choosing the staff. As a staff member, I sometimes find it hard to get my information out to students and get them interested in certain things that the Institute is doing. So I get really excited when I have a passionate student that kind of approaches me with something that they're working on, and I get very excited to help them out because, you know, for once I'm not struggling to get someone to care. So I recommend, especially since hearing about the tuberculosis Johns Hopkins issue yesterday, the drug that the petition is going around to get people aware of what's happening to kind of stop the licensing agreement. We learned then in that story that, you know, higher-ups are very difficult to pin down and like set meetings with. People, even at universities like USC, can be kind of bureaucratic and closed off. They're very easy to approach. Some leaders, if they're very busy, not necessarily because they don't meet people, because they're running around. But just always remember that with every leader at your university or in government, they're supported by a team of really dedicated staff that they respect usually. And I can say that if you work with getting to know the staff members surrounding these people, they will be more than willing to listen and bend your ear to their staff member if the person wants to advocate for you and your organization and to kind of get you squeezed in for a meeting. So it's very useful to kind of build relationships with the staff members at your universities and various like campus groups or schools or departments or offices that could really help your cause. So I really recommend just stopping by an office, letting them put a face to your name, or even just giving them a call. Remember, we get tons of emails, as you do as well, and so it really helps to kind of sort of associate people with their names and their causes. And staff members are generally not kind of, I feel like a lot of us are overlooked, so just come by and say hello. And that's a pretty easy way to kind of get the ball rolling. All right. Anybody a fan of Broad City? No? Okay. All right, sorry about the weird animations. I was just trying to be gimmicky. A lot of you are interested, I think, in reaching out to the media and writers and getting kind of some mainstream attention to your causes and your campaigns. I think I would recommend, I was a journalism student at UNC myself, so I kind of learned from the journalist perspective on how to pick stories and how to meet with people who want to, pitch something to you. So as a journalism student, I learned that in working with editors and I was constantly interning at newspapers, people are very, very happy to be put into a mentorship position, especially if you're a student coming to them for advice. My first recommendation, rather than just doing cold pitches, like calling someone or emailing someone out of the blue at a newspaper or a news agency, I would just recommend reaching out as just like a curious, friendly student. Just at the beginning of the semester, find a bunch of different names of people that are covering issues in the beat of health technologies and medication access issues, and get their contact information, give them a call, ask if you can stop by, or ask if they have a minute of their time to kind of give you some advice on how they would like to be approached with stories like this, or how you can reach out to other journalists and other editors to kind of get people to care. And kind of by putting them in the role where they get to kind of advise and kind of help out, it's definitely a change of pace for them, I think. So when I was writing a lot for newsrooms, you get like press release after press release about events and announcements, and you're dealing with the stress of deadlines, your editor's telling you what to do, and for editorial reasons you can't necessarily cover certain issues the way you want to. But a lot of journalists get into the field because they're interested and passionate about social issues and kind of serving the public and maintaining the best interests of the public. So I think it's pretty easy to convince them with causes like UAMs about access to medicine issues is a huge problem, and I think that they'll recognize pretty immediately. But it is a complex challenge, and I think explaining it is kind of where the problem lies here. But I'll go into that later. Okay, so I broke out my whole journalism book and found that there was this kind of like top 3 ways to get your message out. I kind of changed the last one. The last one was supposed to be monitor the results, but I wanted to focus on kind of publishing your message. So, okay. Starting off with identifying your goal. Just make sure you know right from the get-go who you're trying to promote or campaign for. Know what you're doing, which is going to be pretty obvious, like organizing an event, publicizing a protest, promoting a brief or position, anything that you're doing. And then you're going to, I think the very first thing you should do after that is identify who your audience is going to be. So like we discussed before, it's hard to get people to care about issues relating to strangers that live maybe like around the world. And everyone kind of sees these stories in the news are so disheartening and sad. And I think people kind of distance themselves because they just don't understand what matters to them. Not everyone in the world, unlike you guys here in this room, will care about something just because it's right or good. People are busy, people care about their families, people are kind of focused on themselves sometimes. And for the rest of the people who aren't passionate and would like to do something, sometimes it's hard to read a story about someone accessing medication that's too expensive or it's not available in the region. It's an issue of them feeling kind of powerless to act on it, and they don't understand that it's an urgent issue, and that's why I call this urgency and agency. It's really important to be very clear with whatever you're communicating that it's an urgent issue, it needs to be taken care of immediately, and that there are ways for people to have agency and be empowered to do something about it, and very specific action items that you can lay out. Sorry, I'm checking minutes. So sometimes, with mainstream media, I think that's one of the big problems. People will see a story about, Uganda or something, and they'll just be like, oh, there's another horrible thing going on in Africa. And the way mainstream news covers it, it's kind of for the lay person, for the lay audience to kind of just lay out the basic problem. This conflict happens, this issue is happening. And so when you see people like the S-Men and Andy's talk yesterday, we kind of learned, like, it's cool to punk people and shock them using absurdity and humor, but sometimes it's not what we're able to do at the moment. So I think there are ways to go about getting people to care about your cause without necessarily having to go to the lengths of being an imposter at a meeting or something. So I'll kind of go into that a little bit later. But another thing to think about after you're thinking about your audience is your delivery method. These are just a couple ways to kind of figure out how you're going to get your message out to the public. Media coverage, we kind of discussed some pros and cons with that. Pros is that it's free to get your story covered. If you're hitting kind of a mainstream news agency, then you'll have really far reach, which is what we all want. And you kind of get an air of authority when you have a legitimate, like very well-recognized news organization covering your story. It kind of gives people a reason to kind of step and pay attention. However, there are some cons. It does take a lot of legwork and kind of going back and forth and maintaining relationships and building relationships with writers and editors to kind of even get them to notice you. So that does take time. And also, sometimes, like this happened to me last week, I had a journalist pick up a story that I was working on, and they kind of run with it however they see fit. So you can tell them 1,000 times, please don't take this angle, please take this angle, focus on this, focus on this, and then they can kind of just run with it however their editor kind of wants them to take it. So know that once you put your information out and get the media to cover it, you won't necessarily have control over what they're saying. Also, there's the typical printed materials. I'm sure you guys will do handouts and flyers and posters and things. And those are really great tangible ways to get people to recognize like who you are on campus and other places. But also, you have to remember designing anything takes time. Printing anything is, I don't know if I've ever worked with printers and had issues with printing errors, but it can be kind of messy. None of the social media we'll talk about a lot more later. I'm going to have to probably speed through some of this. I have a lot of info to get you on that. Are you all active on social media? Anybody kind of not feeling it? I think some people I think are still a little hesitant about it, but I think we're getting to the point where we don't really have to convince people to use social media as there's been issues that have arisen in the last couple of years where social media has played a big part in kind of changing the world. So I think now we're not really asking people to buy into social media, but what we're trying to do is get people to use social media effectively. Because there's all these people putting their voices out there, and not all of them are being heard. So the pros of that, it's free, you get a wide reach, complete control over your messaging. Cons is that it does take a lot of nurturing and cultivating to get following. And you have to constantly be posting and engaging content. You can't just let it go stagnant because then your visibility will just kind of plummet. But the benefit of that is you can really plan to schedule posts in advance, and there's a lot of tools with social media that will kind of assist your kind of activist ambitions. All right, so going on to crafting the message. So, back to the trust-fueled journalism book. These are the 7 ways to interest an audience. I'll kind of go through them kind of quickly. This is just kind of how you're going to approach writing your message, putting it together. You need an entry point. You need a way to kind of approach an issue. So the big one, I think that we kind of really play out in this field is impact. Does it matter to them? Does this issue have an effect on their lives or their pocketbooks, especially pocketbooks? The bigger the consequences, the bigger the story should be in theory, but sometimes we all know the things that we work on, while they may have a huge impact on people, they kind of get overlooked in their kind of little side wire story buried inside of the newspaper. So that one doesn't always have as much of an impact as we would like. Another one is immediacy. Has the story just happened or is it about to happen? That's kind of considered the time peg. If something's happening, like a trade agreement or something, that's what you're going to peg your stories to in order to get the newspapers and the TV reporters to kind of cover it. Every story has to have a time peg, and that's basically what's going to tell people that why is this happening now? Why is it urgent that you address this subject now? And every story needs that. Proximity is also another big one. A local newspaper is probably going to spend more time talking about a local student activist organization rather than some activist organization that's not related to the community. Things that are happening close to people's houses, their schools and their workplaces tend to get more visibility. And so it's good to play up how close by is the story, how close to home is it going to hit. And also dealing with some of the issues that we deal with, a lot of these things are maybe issues that we won't necessarily see at home. So it's good to find any way to connect it. Maybe there's someone in the community who's a well-known figure, has a family member in the country, and that person is suffering because they can't afford their insulin or something. Interview the person in your community, and that's going to be your local tie-in. Private comments. Does the story involve a well-known public figure or celebrity? Obviously, that's going to be enough for some stories to kind of get attention. Novelty, is it new, odd, surprising, or funny? Like the Yes Men, that's a very novel concept for some people, and it's surprising. So that's a good way to kind of enter stories to lead with that. Also, conflict. Is there a sports rivalry? This was the example, that doesn't really apply to us probably. But a political battle. And those are kind of big things that reporters look out for, especially if it's like a big public, a big public company or a governing body. If there's like some big fight going on, they love that stuff. So always point towards that as well. And then emotions. Does the story make us feel anything happy, sad, angry? I'm going to pause on that a little bit because I think a lot of us have been hearing a lot about emotions and narrative and storytelling and global health. And it's become a really big kind of, almost like a buzzword now. It became this like new hot thing. And then there's all these like how-to guides now, how to tell a story, how to build, here's the recipe for a story. Know that some of the facts aren't necessarily important, but it's the meaning. And I kind of don't like that stuff because I feel like storytelling is a lot more natural than I think it comes off in some of these like how-to guides. We're all pretty well familiar with stories and how to tell them. It's just a natural part of our lives. And I think that constructing a story specifically for something that's not necessarily entirely non-fictional is kind of weird because I come from a journalism background and I think that there's millions of stories to be told. There's a lot of ways to record them and organize them in order to get to the heart of the matter. So, I don't know, there's some other interesting things coming out. There's a toolbox. There's a couple different toolboxes I'm going to show you, but I did some reading about the Beautiful Trouble book, and there's a little bit about narrative in there, and also there's the Rockefeller Foundation has been doing some digital storytelling tools, and they kind of call out the importance of urgency and agency in your stories. Having stories that really show people acting on a big problem that's affecting them right now, and then being empowered to do something about them. Those are the kinds of stories that are going to empower other people to care and to act and to do it quickly. So that just took a slide out of their report. And this is kind of like their strategic storytelling approach. It's like their roadmap for the digital storyteller guidebook they kind of have. So you can kind of see the steps are kind of be aware of the need, care about the cause, understand the problem and the solution, find the sense of urgency, feel a sense of urgency, and know how to help. Do you guys know Katie? She's with Open Society Foundation. You guys might have worked with her. She was here today. Is she? Okay, well, she shared this on Facebook yesterday, and I saw it. It's not really related to just communications in general. It's more focused on this New York Times Magazine article kind of is talking about how design is sort of changing towards drawn on emotion rather than fact. And that quote, facts are out, feelings are in, kind of struck me. I don't know how I feel about it really, but that's kind of the trend of where things are going. People are kind of really going after emotions right now. And I think that I'm a fan of that, but I'm also a fan of facts. So, another component of storytelling is visual imagery. And I think imagery across the board should always be used in whatever message you're putting out there. If it's a tweet or if it's a blog post, if you're pitching a news release out, always have a very striking visual image or video that accompanies it. I know some of you might be interested in like Pinterest or Instagram or BuzzFeed, and you'll notice that nowadays people are always putting these like kind of clickbait images on there, and they kind of draw you in. I don't know about you guys, if I see something that's like posted on Facebook and it's like an article and there's just no picture, I kind of like don't even look. So just always consider it mandatory. If you're putting out any kind of communication into the world, always have a good image to go with it. And if you're not really familiar with photography or the basics of composition, I recommend just teaching yourself really quickly. It's so easy. There's just some basics you can kind of learn. All of us are photographers who have phones, and as activists, you're going to be part of a lot of events where you need to keep documenting everything that's happening, and you're always going to be happy to have photos after the fact. Just always remember to take photos. But if you're running a story out or a campaign and you just don't have any great visuals, you can always find some online that are copyright free. And I kind of always recommend these ones over here. You don't have to worry about licensing with government works. There's also Flickr Commons. A lot of the photos that you saw me using, those kind of like weird old looking things, were actually from the Commons on Flickr. So you can kind of get some cool looking images that kind of illustrate vaguely what you're talking about, but are interesting enough to click on. But if you're talking about something specific about your organization, you always want to have a photo of you guys doing something in action. Group photo shots are good to kind of have internally, but if you want to get a newspaper or a television news agency in your community to pick up your story, they're not going to want a community like group picture. They're going to want an action shot of you like going out and getting signatures on the petition. Just keep that in mind. And another thing I've been thinking about lately, especially in global health, is the ethical use of imagery. There's a cool guideline, or actually, what is it called? It's kind of like the Judge's Code of Conduct. It's a very nicely illustrated guide to kind of do this and not that with photography and images. I'm going to show you some examples of what not to do. So I took this in Uganda for a project we were doing on maternal health, and so I was documenting the family of a woman in the PG district in Uganda. And so this is kind of a familiar image, I think, to a lot of us. A lot of people kind of use photos like this still, even though I think nowadays it's kind of more unacceptable than ever because we've seen suffering. Everyone knows suffering's out there. Having a contextless photo of some kids living in a poverty-stricken area is just not acceptable to kind of use as a visual, a generic visual for your cause, your campaign, even if it does relate to Africa. So we're really moving away from kind of the poverty images, and also the images of just the smiling, happy, contextless children as well. There's a couple of different things I have on the slide. A couple of things you want to keep in mind. If you need to show struggling and suffering, you have to be very specific about why you're showing it. If you're having a picture about, let's say for me, for my project, if I was talking about these kids and as the children of Mary, the woman that I was documenting, I need to tell I need to have in the caption who these people are, what is the reason that they're suffering, what is the cause behind it. Don't just put it up there just because you want people to feel emotions. That's just not okay anymore. And also, it was never okay. You don't want to put up a photo just to draw pity. You want to, if you want people to care about people that are far away who are suffering, you want to just show how those people are taking action themselves. You don't want to take this approach where, look at these people, they need your help. You want to show them, look at these people, they're taking action, look what they're doing, here's what they're trying to do, get involved. And also, it should be a given, but any photo that you're taking of a person should, if it's a child, you need to get clear consent from the mother and the parent. And also, if you're taking a photo of another person, just always get consent clearly from them. I try to do it written. I translate my media consent forms, but there's other ways to do it as well. And usually universities have some kind of media consent policy and like some forms you can download. Okay, so I'm going to tell a couple stories of my own just to break it up. This is Lillian. She was a retired grandmother living in Zambia. I traveled there with Katie in 2012 to kind of document cancer survivors and the diagnosis issues and treatment issues and medicine access issues that they were facing. They had swelling in the hospital. And Lillian was a woman that had been working for years and years and years next to the copper mines and developed lung cancer. And she struggled a lot with a lot of misdiagnoses. And so we kind of went over to her house and just met her family. This is all 3 generations of women. That's her daughter on the right, holding her granddaughter. And so we kind of went in and interviewed her and used the footage to create a cervical cancer PSA, but we also kind of put the videos online just to live on because she unfortunately passed a couple months after we interviewed her. But doing this was so low cost on our end, and so easy to do and very powerful. We did a media training with these videos the day after I think we shot them. We just did some quick editing. All we had done was gone in there with a sense of what we wanted to ask her, a really cheap camera, tripod, and like a microphone. And now just trying to show that anybody can kind of do this stuff and it can speak volumes and letting people speak for themselves and kind of helping it along by organizing it in a way that kind of makes sense for the random viewer is easy to do. And then another one is a little, this is all of us with the Lane's family. It's kind of weird to put a picture of me up there, but I just put it up there because I think you guys should always remember to document yourselves doing your work. I get so many, whenever I deal with journalists or even like university communications, they always need photos of the students, of the people who are doing something in the shot. So don't just take pictures of people going to a clinic, take pictures of your team, of yourself, working with them. Again, action shots. This would not be a good photo because it's like a posed shot, but all right. This is Mary. I'm going to kind of go through this one pretty quickly. We followed her through pregnancy and childbirth. We were documenting some maternal health issues while women were going to the clinics in the district that we were located in. And this is her newborn son, Douglas. This is her husband. We interviewed them, and she told us that she was able to give birth at the clinic like she had planned because her labor began in the middle of the night. There was no transportation. And we interviewed the husband on the spot. He agreed. He talked about how important he is as a husband, how important it is. And then she told me, oh, I gave birth in my neighbor's house. So when people tell you things, you have to really listen and think of other ways to kind of try to keep the story going and find out and investigate all aspects of that story. So we went over to her neighbor's house. She's an assistant midwife. This is the one that delivered Mary on her living room floor at 3 in the morning. She had her birth supplies, she had her razor, she had all the stuff prepared, but her husband didn't want to carry it with her when he was walking her to her neighbor's house, so he sent him to go for supplies and then he just abandoned her and didn't come back until the baby was born. So for this project, and then again, get a photo of yourself. I know it's silly and seems narcissistic, but that's what the media wants. As much as it's awkward and it might not be right, it's also something that'll get your family to care and your friends to care about what you're doing. I know my family doesn't know what I do, really. So when you show photos like this, it'll kind of help your community around you to start recognize what you're doing and kind of opens discussion for specific work that you're doing and get them to understand. Because you just show a picture like this to your mother, your sister, and you're like, oh, yeah, you're saving people in Africa. That's not what you want them to do. So just that story, again, we easily interviewed them with some, just simple camera, simple microphone, edited it together. If you guys don't know how to do any video editing, it's so easy now on the free tools. You can just do it in iMovie. Anybody can do it. I think a lot of people are kind of afraid, like, oh, I'm a photographer. Oh, I don't know how to measure audio levels and stuff. These days, the technology pretty much does all work for you. So I encourage you to kind of take a do-it-yourself approach. There's free tutorials all over the internet, and just kind of spend a day just teaching yourself some of these skills, because you'll find it, I guarantee you, you'll find a way that will help you out in the future. Okay. Now we're just getting to the point where I'll just spew my pet peeves, and hopefully you'll learn from them. Okay, branding and consistency. I see a lot of people emailing me about something they want me to include in the newsletter on our website or social media, and I have to kind of scrounge around to find a logo, a photo to go with it. They don't have a title or a description, so I have to kind of Google the organization and write something myself, and then I may not know when it's taking place or the location's not there, and it wastes a lot of time. So sometimes when I get emails like that, I just don't have time to deal with it. So do all the work and have a clear branding approach. You don't necessarily have an official kind of branding guidebook or style guide, but always have your logo, always use it as your user image on all your social media so you're instantly recognized. Have a high resolution version of your photo somewhere, like a vector file or something that's over 300 DPI. And these agencies, they rarely publish photos, but some organizations on campus might need it for a shirt or something, and it just saves everyone a lot of emails just to have it on your computer to send whenever you send all the information. Again, have a title or a headline already prepared. This seems kind of like obvious, but you'd be surprised by how much I have to do, how much legwork I have to do in order to find this stuff. Also have a description written out in sentences, not just bullet points, because I can't just publish bullet points in my newsletter. I write things out. So also have some boilerplate language about UAM, and that will help people instantly recognize who you guys are, and they won't have to go through the trouble and potentially make mistakes about describing you guys, since they'll already have the language that's approved. Date, always put the date of whether it's the event date or the date that you're publishing something, like a press release. I can't tell you how many times I've come across web pages or releases or announcements where people have written something, and I don't know whether it was written in 2009 or 2015, and I have to look into the code and find out when it's been published. It's ridiculous. So just put a date on it. Just like how your teachers told you, put your name in the top left corner with the date. Just always do that. Contact info, vital, put an email address, put a phone number if you can, especially if you're working with community groups or people that may not have great access to email. And also your website and other links that you want to include for more information. Okay. Oh, and also keeping a consistent branding, keeping it consistent across all the different ways you're sending out information will get people to think that you're more legitimate. if they just see like a random Word document and there's no like recognizable logo or kind of information about the organization, it kind of makes you look kind of haphazard. So always just get some like Word template. I know you guys might already have some of the stuff, it's not relevant, but yeah, okay. Moving on. So who can help you reach your audience? Once you've identified your audience. Like I said before, a lot of you guys are probably interested in reaching out to newspapers and journalists. Get a list of names, like I said before, of the journalists, writers, editors who are working on related issues. And when you're making a press release for them, then it's okay to maybe do some bullets, very quick information. They don't have a lot of time to read your stuff. Make sure your headline or the entry point title or something is very eye-catching and it conveys a sense of urgency. Always make sure the 5 W's are very clear. Journalists operate on the 5 W's. Who, what, when, where, and why. And so the why part is the most important. Why is this important to people? Why should they care? And I like to apply the why to all the other W's as well. So why is this happening? Here we have why is it affecting these people, the who. Why is this issue an issue at all? That's the what. Why is it happening here? That's the where. Why is it happening right now? That's the when. So all that needs to be very obvious from the get-go. And also organize it like the inverted pyramid, which is the golden journalism kind of structure, which is keeping all the important information at the very top and then drilling down into the details below. And that kind of comes from the old journalism style, and editors would chop off words at the bottom to meet column widths and things. So that still kind of needs to be a good way to organize your information because readers tend to stop reading after the first couple sentences or paragraphs. So you want to make sure they get all the information that they need at the very top. And also, don't just talk about the issue. Don't just say that there's this problem happening or this agreement is happening or the university is doing this. Make sure you not only make it clear why this is an urgent issue, why this needs to be addressed right now, why they need to cover it right now, but include items that make the pathway for action clear. This is how people can get involved in this to get this to stop, or these are X, Y, and Z ways we need people to act. List them out very clearly, and that kind of gives your story more depth. There's also a lot of other people you can reach out to besides the media, and I really, really encourage this because you have so many resources available online, And it's so much easier to find like kind of a crowd of people and just carve out an audience who might already be interested in your stuff. Think about like patient support groups. If you guys ever Googled a health problem, I'm sure you land on a website where people are just talking about their diagnosis or their doctor or their sense medication. And a lot of these websites are kind of organized around a specific disease. And there's websites, I know a couple where they have very passionate leaders and people who kind of unite everyone with a newsletter or conferences annually, and they feature the stories of some of the members every month. If you are focusing on a specific medicine, find the people who are taking that medicine in these support groups, and maybe try reaching out and ask if you can have a corner in the newsletter every month. I'm sure you can get very easily, a lot of the people in these support groups are very passionate about this already because it affects their lives personally, but I'm sure they'd be more than happy to sign any petitions you have going around. That could be a great way to raise a lot of signatures in a short amount of time. So there's that. Do any of you know any like internet celebrities, like people who are really famous on Instagram or like YouTube? Anybody? Does anybody have like an actual friend that's a celebrity on social media or anything? No, I'm sure some of you are like 2 degrees away from like a makeup tutorial girl or like a fitness expert on Instagram. But that could be another way to sort of find an audience outside the box. If you know someone who has a following that's millions of people that are absolutely obsessed with them, why not ask them? I don't know about you, but whatever on Instagram, I always see people promoting these products are getting paid to promote. Why not ask them to do you a favor and talk about an issue that relates to them in a certain way, but also draw attention to the bigger issue of access to medicines. Like, I keep going back to this diabetic example, but what if there's an exercise blogger or something who has diabetes and has talked about it before on her YouTube channel? Why not ask her to do a special video about imagining what her life would be like without easy access to her insulin? And then that kind of opens you up into a whole other audience that would never have paid attention to you before, but because they care so much about this one person with all these followers, that could open you up to even get mainstream attention. They love, mainstream media loves to follow and cover these internet celebrities, so that's another option. And find I'll go list as well. So again, make everything easy for people to share and to pick up. I already talked about paying for stuff up top, avoiding acronyms. This is a big pet peeve of mine. We love acronyms in science and research, and I hate them. People do not know what acronyms stand for. Like, even in your own fields, people might not know what you're talking about. Always spell out on first reference. If you absolutely have to mention a name of an organization or some kind of other acronym, always spell it out on first reference, and then try to avoid using acronyms for the rest of the story. If you have to use it, do it. There's ways to skirt it. You could say the organization or the institute or the governing body or something like that. But it looks like word soup if you just put acronyms everywhere. And also they're not correct style for journalists to use, so they're going to have to obliterate them anyway. There's a lot of jargon in our field, and global health generally can be very intimidating to read about because there's so many diseases and medicines and health systems, and it gets very confusing for the general public to kind of understand. So I like to say, right, for like pretend everyone who's reading your article is a 13-year-old, and when you're trying to figure out a way to approach you and explain something, try to imagine that you're on the phone with your mother on a long-distance call. She may be a little hard of hearing, and try to explain it as if you would explain it to your mother on this like international call. And that means you stop and slow down and simplify. And that's kind of a way to kind of approach it. Put everything online. Don't just send PDFs willy-nilly to people. Makes my job harder. I don't want to have to publish my own page on my website for your thing. Just give me the link and I will send the link out to people. If you're ever dropping a name of a scientist or researcher or government official, you always have to explain who that person is when you mention them. The very first time you mention them. Even if you're talking about Barack Obama, you have to say President Barack Obama. People don't always, you can't ever assume people know who you're talking about. Watch the clock. Make sure you're not notifying people too early about this, because then they may forget. Don't notify them too late, so they may not have time to promote. Sometimes I get people asking me to promote an event that's happening the next day, and I'm like, I have meetings all day, I can't do that. So kind of be respectful of that time. And then do all the fact checking you can. Don't ever cite a statistic that might be incorrect. Attribute all sources for information that you're giving. This will make your life much easier. If a journalist is talking with you about publishing a story, they're going to ask to double check all the facts constantly. So if you have the source available, just tell them you can check this fact at this link. Much easier. And also send a high resolution photo. High resolution being the key word here. You can't send a little iPhone photo to a lot of people, so I guess I can put people call me. All right, or to cut out the middleman. So social media, we have 5 minutes here, but social media is kind of a really great way to sort of dominate and get your communications out. News consumption generally has been changing, and Pew reports that newspaper weekday circulation has been falling 19% since 2004. Primetime cable news viewership is down. So given that people are changing the way they get news, and people are accessing a lot more news through social media, even through podcasts. I don't know, are any of you interested? Have you heard of Serial that kind of made, yeah, Serial, right? I honestly think, I don't actually have the research to support it, I shouldn't be saying it, but I feel like Serial has made podcasts like a lot cooler. Think about ways outside the box of the mainstream news to kind of get your stuff out there. Why not start a podcast? You can do it as Serial. And social media, again, keep a tab on the latest platforms that are out there. I know when Vine came out, I was like all over it, and then I got confused because nobody else was on there. But now Vine is like super, super cool, and it's found its niche in comedians, and it's really like oriented towards humor. So I would experiment with anything that you can find, any platform. Find the one that kind of works with your audience at your university, and then just kind of experiment with it. Don't be afraid to try something new. These are the top social media platforms and kind of the age ranges associated. Facebook's elderly population is growing. Younger people are kind of gravitating more towards Instagram and Snapchat. Check out how Snapchat is doing with the young folks. So use some research to kind of guide which platform you need to really make the most of. It helps to kind of have a couple different platforms, like Instagram and stuff, just in case people are tagging you and you can kind of take advantage of it. But I would just find your main space and then really use it well. I know we're all very busy, so try to keep it easy, but also pay attention, because a lot of these things change really quickly over time. People stop using Facebook or something like that, so it helps to be versed in social media generally. Okay, I have a couple just pausing moments to explain certain things. I don't know how proficient, I'm sure you guys are very proficient in social media, and I probably need to explain this, but I feel like some people are a little confused about hashtags still. The hashtag is just a way to organize information, like posts. People tend to use them a lot at conferences like this one, hashtag UNEM 2015. It's a really cool way to sort of create a parallel space for people to talk that may not otherwise be talking in person. And you can also, I'll go into that later, but you can also archive these conversations that are going along with these hashtags. And you just put a hashtag in front of it, and the thing is, a lot of social media has a hashtag functionality. Facebook does, Instagram, Twitter, obviously. So once you get the hang of it, you'll get the hang of it for lots of different platforms. Posting, there's just some couple of things to remember. Make sure you have a tone. Don't just post an announcement about an event all the time. Post interesting things that are going to engage people. Don't be afraid to be personable and have a fun voice. You can use the first person. You don't always have to be speaking as an organization. And be courteous. If people are sharing a lot of your posts, share those people's posts and kind of reciprocate. The handle is the username, basically. You just tag someone by putting an @ sign and then writing their name, and usually it'll auto-populate, and it'll just create a link to that person's profile. And that's a really good way to notify them that you're talking about them, and then they can go and retweet or repost or share what you're doing. So it kind of gives people a heads up that someone's talking about them. And it's a good way to call out people, by the way, like politicians. People are starting to care about that. Those Twitter scandals you hear about, they get a lot of attention. So if you're going to call out a politician on something, make sure you're doing it right. It's just do it on social media. All right, so sharing, we kind of talked about this already. Most platforms have a share function. I don't think Instagram, at least I don't have outdated version of Instagram, but it's not as easy to share on Instagram, but tweeting, you can retweet, you can kind of reply, you can do several different ways of communicating with people. Facebook, you can just share the share button. Okay, kind of the last thing I want to talk about is preserving a lot of this stuff. I think people don't really think about social media and the need to preserve what you're talking about, what you're doing, but it scares me that like so many things are happening all the time, and like, social media is constantly going. But what if I really wanted to go back and like preserve that one conference that we were talking at, or we were collecting a bunch of students to talk about their experience with the World Health Assembly. And so you can see I use Storify to do that. Storify is a method of creating a story with specific tweets and posts from various social media, and you can kind of create a narrative that way. So we do that with our World Health Assembly trip every year. So you can kind of have a record of what happened, so you don't lose it while other posts are burying it. Okay, sorry, I'm like 1 minute over, but these are just some tools if you guys want to learn more about storytelling and social media. USAID has a really good kind of social media for civil society guidebook, which you can download, and it gives you the more like an overview of how to use different platforms. The Rockefeller Foundation has a draft digital storytelling platform assessment. I don't know if it ever got finalized, but it kind of gives a primer of all the different platforms that are relevant right now. I saw something really cool called Hatch the other day. So I was looking at Rockefeller Foundation stuff, and they launched a beta, kind of a storytelling, very activist-oriented kind of think space. I don't know how else to describe it. You log in and you can see tons of different articles about storytelling and crafting a narrative and how to get people to care about what you're doing. And it's like thought pieces written by a bunch of different leaders in the field. Okay, so any questions? Last minute? Sorry, it took so long. All right. Any of you guys have any issues with dealing with the media or press, or them getting things wrong, or not paying attention to you? Well, if you get curious or call me answer, I'm happy to look after.
want to know.
Yes. 311.
We've got a panel coming up, but you guys want to set up. Okay. Meredith will get people here, and then while things are getting sorted, we could take a moment to do a couple of special recognition awards. I'm trying to figure out if we have all the folks here that we would need to be able to give out the awards. Ideally, the award recipients would be here. And I do not stop them. They are around, they just not really exciting. Yeah. All right, so we've got a couple, 2, 8, yeah, both right. Okay. Good enough. I think we're all here. So every year for at least the last couple of years, we've done some annual special recognition awards to note people who have over the last year worked especially hard for UAM within their chapters, for their organization more generally, or a chapter that has been particularly inspiring. And so I thought we would start this year with the chapter award. And anybody from the chapter, or all of the people from the chapter, if you guys want to come up, whoever's here. This year we want to recognize the Alberta chapter. The Alberta team has made huge contributions to UAEM's success and growing recognition over the last year. They are, I'm told, a super organized chapter that has produced a lot of really great material, which they have generously shared for use by all UAMers. They've been described as a very supportive and communicative chapter. And they have developed, to quote one nominator, the kind of following and voice in the community that we should all strive for. So whoever's here from Alberta wants to come up. We have a certificate, and then there actually is a award part that I think you'll get by mail. That is a good question. I did not see Rob, but I guess I will get Anybody want to pretend to be from Alberta to come? Nobody's coming. Yeah, then you come get it and you share. I'll start with you actually. Okay. Thank you. That's right. It's a source of pride for all Canadians. And a special mention to the Nepal chapter, IOM. These guys have worked exceptionally hard to advance our organization's mission and vision. They have done a great job of engaging students and stakeholders from a broad range of backgrounds on issues of NTDs and essential medicines. They have actively advocated in particular for access to life-saving Hep C drugs, sofosbuvir, which we talked about yesterday, and other antivirals, looking to have the government of Nepal issue compulsory licenses, and that's obviously a really important campaign. We wish them well in the year ahead. We'll be working with them, supporting them, and so excellent work so far, and may all continue. They've been doing a whole host of things from lectures and interviews to formal and informal discussions with the folks who are involved in the National Protocol Development for Treatment of Hep C infected individuals in Nepal. So really great work, and keep it. So 2 last awards, individual recognition awards, and the first is for Mohammed. He was described by a nominator as one of the most hardworking and humble individuals the nominator has ever met, not just limited to UN experiences, but in life. And Western University's success, where Mohammed was an undergrad, can be attributed in significant part, I'm told by his colleagues, to his dedication and initiative taking. He was not only the access director, but he took on many and started many additional projects beyond just fulfilling his immediate role. So one was as the Global Access Campaign. He engaged in discussions with the executive director of Western's TTO to introduce UAM and begin the conversation around adopting socially responsible patenting and licensing policies around equitable access-driven policies. He also led summer training sessions for new student leaders, focusing on building working relationships with the TTO, and was the project lead for Western University's Global Health Report Card, putting together a team to do policy analysis and researching, grant databases and developing the collection of data. So the fact that all of that got done in just a year, people nominating him noted that that was really due to his hard work. It wouldn't have happened if he hadn't taken the lead. And he's laid a foundation for the chapter's success in the coming years, which, as you guys all know, is so crucial with all the turnover at universities, that chapter will go on to be successful now that he's graduated, is a testament to much hard work. So we've seen Mohammed's passion for UAM grow. He's now part of the North American Coordinating Committee, and really onto great projects ideas. And one of the nominators noted about him as a person, where I remember at our first Western University UAM meeting, he was the only individual who had come prepared with pages and pages of research, even though he didn't have to have anything ready at the time. The drive of his for UAM has never faltered. For these reasons and many others, it would lead me to write an essay. Mohammed truly deserves to be recognized for what he has done and will continue to do. So Mohammed, we recognize you. And then finally, one more award. This one goes to Sam. He has continued to lead the CMU UAM chapter. They won the chapter award last year, but this is as an individual award recognizing Sam's contributions and all the progress that they've made there on his account against the resistant administration. He really stepped up to the CC and has taken on more and more responsibility and leadership since attending the WHA in 2014. And he embodies, as his nominator wrote, the spirit and passion of UAM, and has one of the clearest lines of thought possible. He's truly deserving of recognition. He has been able to organize the group at CMU to make progress on two major initiatives, both in difficult phases right now. Developing a curricular concentration in global health at the university is one. Students do not have any curricular authority here, and the Department of College Politics have stood in the way, but Sam's been patient and persistent, and has really taught the group not to give up. And on top of all these things, he's been actively working on making the group sustainable through adaptations in student leadership. And that's not just about recruiting, but mentoring and finding other ways of thinking about process and organization to ensure that CMU remains one of our top chapters for years to come. So, without further ado, we'll recognize Sam Mike-Sawa. For American History, your prizes are in demand. But thank you again. And the one last mention, but this is a special mention not specific to this year's work, but Dion has been, is she here? There she is. Has been a member of the CC and of the organization for many years now and has made really extraordinary contributions on a wide range of projects, including TPP, and is very much deserving of special recognition for these incredible long-term efforts and represents the kind of sustained, persistent leadership that's so important in an organization like ours. There is this turnover of students. We rely on people who are willing to stick with us for the long haul and who manage to avoid the burnout that can certainly come with time, and who are always willing to think about old problems in new ways and to be really creative in their activism and in their leadership. And you are all of those things, and we thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Ellen. We do now have a slightly late panel that is about to happen with our fabulous UAM alumni. But I do know that some people, there was a bird dogging session, it was on, and then it was off, and there was a yacht involved and some sailing. But it is on again, and I know some people have also come specifically for the wonderful Paul Davis, who's just hiding in the middle there. So that will be in room 311. The rest of us will be in here for the alumni panel. All right.
Go ahead and panelists, please join me on the stage. Hi everyone. Hi guys. Thanks for sticking in with us. We have something very exciting and special prepared for you. Oh no, come on. I would love to I'll it's like a beauty pageant. I'm just going to do it now. So these illustrious panelists will introduce themselves. I'm having a height issue, sorry. Okay. So welcome to the UAM Careers panel. Last year it was the alumni panel, but it's the same idea, and I'm super excited to have this again, our second annual panel. It was actually very well received last year, and I think one of the reasons is because this is a big topic that we talk about in the hallways and over emails and maybe Skype sessions if you're lucky, but we haven't had a separate time to talk about this here at the conference until recently. So we'll go ahead and introduce the panelists. I'll let them introduce themselves individually, but before I do that, I want to sort of highlight the big takeaway points here. So already at this conference, I've had a couple of individual conversations with a couple of you, even some of the people on the panel, about what does UAM look like after training. So we're lifelong learners, but we get day jobs. What does that look like? How can you be an activist and a pathologist, or how can you be a lawyer and someone who's passionate about global health? So and it gets more complex from there. But all of the people up here have amazing stories, and I'm going to share them with you today, and we're also going to open it up for questions. But the big picture idea is to get you empowered and knowledgeable about activism and how to stay with UAM and the ideals of UAM for lifelong. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And just you guys, for the sake of time, go ahead and name what you used to do with UAM and what you do now. We're going to start. Fasting? Yeah. Oh, in order. Copy, please.
Hi, my name is Cuddy. I joined UAM at the start of medical school many years ago now. I was part of the chapter at Johns Hopkins where I was in school. I was part of the coordinating committee for a couple years, and then I was on the board for a while. Now I am a psychiatry resident in Boston here.
My name is Peter Marinuk. I was one of 3 founders of Berkeley UAM in 2005. The others being Virginia Zaunbecker, who some of you met yesterday, who's just rejoined the board, and Hillary Freudenthal-Chen, who was recently a good solid stint in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. I mostly focused on chapter work and chapter building. They were both part of the CC. And worked on socially responsible licensing at Berkeley, as well as campus education and outreach events. And today, I'm the Global Access Medicine Program Director of Public Citizen, which is a major consumer advocacy organization in Washington, D.C., and a lawyer.
Hi, I'm Sunny, Sundeep for Sunny for short. I first joined in 2005, so 10 years ago, as the lead on the Cornell chapter. So I think you can already see that there's a chapter leadership frame here. And I had 3 interests. On the innovation side, I'm a PhD nerd, so if you guys like parasitology or microbiology, there's a room for you in UAM. So I did some work on neglected diseases and drug discovery. On the access side, I was really interested in thinking about medicines for non-communicable diseases, things like cancer and heart disease, as well as for HIV and malaria. And I think the other thing at Cornell was basically, I know for a lot of folks, it's tough to have a platform to actually learn about some of these things. So UAM, in many ways, was a vector for us to build the first global health curriculum at Cornell. That gave me enormous flexibility. Now I've gone on to actually found a nonprofit, I'll tell you guys about later, and I'm maybe not a doctor going forward.
Hi everyone. So clearly the most recently graduated here on the panel. No longer training, I suppose. No, we're always training. So for me, I started with UAM in 2010, working with the Central Michigan University chapter, half of the audience. And I started there as a PR rep, kind of just getting the word out about UAM on campus. And then took over as chapter leader for 2 years before going to Yale for my MPH, where I helped kind of rebuild and lead the chapter there for 2 years. Post UAM, still around a bit. During those 2 years at Yale, I was also on the coordinating committee, helping mostly around some of our work on the TPP alongside Deanne, we'll talk about that later, and working on a few other projects, mostly around developing chapter leadership, things like that. Now I work as a community organizer with Partners in Health. We have a grassroots movement called PIH engaged is very similar to UA in a lot of respects in terms of how we're built and based and structured. And many of you have worked alongside those chapters as well. So.
All right, so I'm going to ask a few specific guided questions. If not everybody needs to answer, but feel free to answer as you feel fit, and then we'll switch to questions from the audience too. But just to get started off, so UAM, all of you were chapter leaders in some way or another, and so how the skills that you developed in UAM, how did they later become of use to you professionally? And if you could give some specific examples, maybe of a campaign you worked on or a particular skill, and not everyone has to answer about because I have questions for you. But,
Yeah, sure. So this is kind of for me it's a bit of an unfair question because I turned the things I did with UA into what I do now professionally completely by continuing to organize students in the same kind of way. But I guess, some of the lessons that you really learn with UAEM, for anyone that was in the chapter building session, you heard a lot of these things from Keith and others who organized that session as well. But a lot of things that you learn about how to kind of organize your team and get going and really how to bring people into a movement that's really wonky and technical from UAM just translates into what you can do in your professional life. Like the same way that you invite your friend over for coffee and then you end up later knocking on the TTO's office door. Not the same thing. Maybe the same thing. Anyway, the way that you go from that is the same thing that you do in your own personal relationships, and the same thing that you do, especially if you end up in a community organizing role. Day in and day out, you're just trying to, for me, build those relationships and move people into action. So UA pretty much was a perfect training ground. I like to think I majored in UA. Like everyone else here.
I think for me, I think for a lot of folks in the room, if you're here on almost 2:45 on a Sunday, there's something unique about you. Let's just say that. And I feel I'm very grateful that you guys are still here. And I think, I was talking to my brother, he's in a little pink shirt back here. He's a first year medical school. And I think something that a lot of people, something that a lot of people struggle with, and I certainly did, is a sense of belonging. This is actually what my brother said. He said, he's not quite sure about belonging. I think with UAM, and it's kind of a self-interested reason being a chapter leader, is I felt an incredible sense of belonging. Some of my closest friends are up on the stage here with me today. I didn't have to explain myself. People knew my values as a justice leader. And I can't tell you how important it is early in your careers in your life to have that. Because that's when you know what you stand for. And people will have your back and hold you accountable for that. So it becomes like a family, and that's why I'm here today.
In 2003, before I joined UAM, I met James Levinson back. I was working in an office that actually Jamie and Rob Weissman, my current boss, and Ralph Nader and a bunch of other interesting consumer advocates all working together. And I got interested in Jamie's work in this area, just seeing simultaneously the work that we all do. It's creative, it's intellectual, brings together these disparate skill sets, how to be a political strategist and advocate, how to understand the technical field in real depth, whether it's an aspect of medicine, or law, or biology, economics, and then pull it together in some meaningful way to change the world. It's really a compelling field in which one can continue to learn year after year. As was just said earlier, UA's got problems that might seem older. UA for me was a way to sort of get deeper into those issues over the course of law school. My law school didn't have any kind of curriculum related to these issues. But through UA, I was able to develop a skill set and a knowledge base until basically a job opened up on the other end of law school. And I was able to go into that field professionally, moved back into the same building with Jamie and Rob, moved up one floor and $15,000, and that's what I got for law school. But the chance to do this work professionally ever since. So, in the end, our professional trajectories are determined in part because a lot of it has to do with community and the organizations we affiliate with and people we get to know over time, because those are the doors that tend to open to us just by being in the community for career design. And UAM was and continues to be that for me. So that's sort of my 10th annual conference.
Well, everything these guys have been saying very much resonates with me, and I know it from Gloria as well. We had a conversation about this earlier this weekend. I think that if you are sort of, for whatever reason, your upbringing, your community friends, growing up, the news that you've been exposed to, if you're interested in social justice and want to maintain an eye on social justice while you're pursuing some sort of degree or some sort of technical training, it's very important to surround yourself with a virtual community of people that share your values or inculcate those values in you. And I think what's been most important for me personally within UAM is having this group of touchstones or other moral compasses that I can look to. And, from the mentor level, like Rachel Monroe is one of the closest mentors in life still, like 9 years on, or peer mentors like Sunny, we worked on a number of things together in UAM and in the years afterward. I think having those moral compasses around you as touchstones and champions whenever you are in an ethically dicey situation, you're not sure what direction your life should head in, like, gosh, am I fulfilled? Am I doing the right thing? Maybe I should take a gap year or two or more. I think that UAM helped me continue to have the drive and passion to get through medicine personally, and I think that it has done the same for many people in many technical fields.
All of you. So I'll sum that up, kind of sum it up a little bit. It sounds like it's funny. I think responsiveness to emails. Well, that's a pretty general skill you also learn with UAM. All of these very sort of like very tangible skills. You don't even think about them anymore years on when you're in the workplace because they've become so commonplace. But here they are, and like what you really remember when I'm hearing from you all is it's the relationships, it's the support structure. And that was sort of mentioned the other question I was going to ask, but I don't really need to ask it in a separate question because I think the resounding response is that, well, like I probably gained a lot of, follow-up responsiveness from, tangible skills, but what you really remember is the support structure and how it's still there for you after you're no longer a trainee with UAM. I think that's really powerful, is maintaining that family and that network post-graduation. But I want to move to a little bit more of a discussion on specifics. So about maybe 2.5 of you have really pretty much jumped into activism from UAM and stayed in activism thus far, through and through. But what does it look like for people who, and I was having a conversation with a trainee earlier today where it was like, in medicine, it's like, well, I'm a first year, second year medical student, and I have all these opinions about what the third year, what specialty I need to go into. But at the end of the day, regardless of if you're medicine or not, you have to choose what you're going to love. Presumably, hopefully, you'll be doing that for the rest of your life. So regardless of, I'm choosing this, why? I'm choosing it because of UAM. No, don't do that. I'm choosing it, why? I'm choosing it because I love it. And then UAM will fit into that, however it is right. So my question to you all is, how do you, and you will have a different answer, but what does it look like for UAM to be a part of your career? How do you make it part of your career? Or maybe you've taken a lesson, maybe you've done this to have you. I think you're also a very clear example of somebody who doesn't necessarily check all of the perfect boxes as an activist of, flag waving every day, but you have this beautiful balance of your clinical passion with a very wonky and awesome and inspiring sort of practice in Geneva still. So, and I think each of you have your own sort of idea, but the question here is, when is, not that UAM is a hobby, but how does UAM, is it okay for UAM to not be your 24/7 job? Yeah. But how does it work? And how does it fit for you?
Let's start with this. You're really good. You're very example. Okay.
I think
tell everyone what like your hats are.
Oh, hats. Gosh, I would say they're constantly changing. Most of the week I spend practicing psychiatry. Days where I'm not working, or weeks that I'm not working, I spend looking at various policy issues through a couple different venues. Sunny's NGO, which I'll let him really tell you about, is focused on non-communicable diseases and the driver of injustice driving these epidemics. And so through that, I sort of, spent a week here, a week there, and we looked mainly at intergovernmental policies and structures and how that ends up, or how that ends up affecting entity epidemics. I guess the one thing that I would try to convey here is that it's really about what you want for your life and how you want to live your life. And I think that you can be doing any number of things. You could be on the full spectrum from full-time activists out in the streets organizing actions. You could be more of a policy wonk that has an activist part, and then you could be like a totally technical person who is doing research work and working with people. There's a time and place for everything in your particular life, and it's important to have a balance that you feel is right for you. If you are going through the sometimes unfortunately arduous process of going through medical school, then you have to realize that there are times where you need to put everything aside, like you study 3 boards, you just need to study 3 boards, and eat, sleep, and you cannot sleep. But that there's a lot of other time, like instead of watching Hulu or Netflix, that you could be on a conference call for UAM, and I found that for me personally, that helped drive me, that gave me the passion that I needed to sustain what is actually a very difficult clinical path.
Okay, so many thoughts here. So,
Tell us all your hats.
okay. One hat is the NGO that Kevin was mentioning is called Young Professionals Trying to Do YP, and it's effectively a network that focuses on the social injustice around NCDs. And I have to be honest with you, it was formed mainly based on my UA experience. I was a board of directors member for 6 years. I've been a chapter leader. And the kind of issue that I was going after wasn't exactly the end of UAM, but UAM was very interested. We created kind of a sister organization in a way, and we made very close touch with Rachel, is one of the closest colleagues and friends and confidants, very close to Mira, who actually comes from the diabetes and NCD space, as you heard yesterday on Insulin. We've definitely teamed up on rallies and documents and other things. The other hat, and I do want to spend just a minute here, because I was actually thinking about the substance of this question and thinking about where I was at 10 years ago when I was here at one of these meetings. Because let's just be honest for a second. Humans do things for one of 2 reasons: love or fear. And I have to say, as a medical student and as a graduate student, I was captivated by fear. It did things, honestly, sometimes for credibility, because others kind of mentioned that this is something we should do. And I think UAM allowed me to not dig into that narrative all the time and to sort of rethink what those things are possible. I think the other thing that UAM taught me was that you need to know yourself in terms of what you're willing to negotiate. What are you willing to give up? What love are you willing to give up in order to actually succeed? And I saw it, colleagues like Peter and folks who were like Ethan, folks who went into this full time allowed me to have a professional touch point on access to medicine, on activism that I don't think I would have had if I didn't have this community group.
So thank you. And how do I follow that? Thank you both for your really insightful points. I think every year, and we're going to continue doing this. It's so beautiful to follow up with you all, but also hear from so many different leaders. And just so this is a perfect example. I mean, you have Kavi, who's a clinician, but still works on an international policy level, and Sunny, who is a leader in the basically pioneering non-communicable diseases as an activism issue. but is also, in academia. So launching a policy policy ideas from academia is also these winding roads, but that they're all possible because of people in UAM sticking together. So I think a lot of these conversations are very interesting. They tend to get into details. Each one of you is probably sitting here and you're like, yeah, but, like I've got my own very specific problems or my own very specific academic or family, personal needs. How will that fit in? So not that we have to get nitty-gritty, but we have about like at least 20 more minutes I want to dedicate. I think that's what we've got. And we can, if someone could, one of you can help me with the microphone passing it around. But just take some time to ask the questions for I have more questions for the panelists, but I really want to make this about you guys because this is how we connect as alumni. It's only meaningful to have UAM alumni if we can actually interact meaningfully with you guys. So with that, let's go ahead and take some questions from you all. Yeah.
Okay, so my question was just about like professionalism in your career in terms of like working with people that are above you that disagree with you and balancing kind of like standing up for what we care about and like caring about like impressing attendings or whatever. So like for example, I think like in the hospital all the time we hear people say like talk about like the Hep C drugs and say, oh, it's fine that it's expensive because it's cheaper than the transplant. So for example, like if we hear our attendings say that, like how do you balance that kind of like wanting to impress people and maintain your role as a student or whatever and also like trying to stand up for things?
I think there's a time and a place for that kind of discussion, and what you would have to honestly consider as a trainee is, do I want to have this discussion on an individual level right now with one of my superiors? Is this the right way to change ideas? And I would actually posit maybe, depending on who your superior is, maybe they really want to know the data or some of the background. Maybe not. Medicine can be so busy in the hospital that you may not have space for that conversation. What I would say and urge you to think about is, I think a better platform for changing the culture of medicine and the culture of health is to write about your ideas, publicize your ideas. So while you're at the UAEM conference and while you're on conference calls with the CC or the board or whatnot, and you're learning about all of this sort of nitty-gritty technical detail about the Hep C drug, absorb it all, digest it, write an op-ed, publish it, show it to your mentors and your attendings at the hospital, and let that speak for your work, because that's how we make a culture change.
Other questions?
These people are an amazing resource. Don't let this pass up.
That's a very good question, and I think probably within most academic hospitals, that aspect of our culture has changed largely because of pretty effective campaigning by AMSA and other organizations. I haven't actually encountered any pharmaceutical reps inside my hospital. I know that that's not the case when you go to outpatient clinics out in the community. So in that setting, when we're working in outpatient clinics, I saw, pharma-funded lunches with representatives, with, for certain brands, that kind of thing. And I find that very ethically concerning. Luckily, I don't have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. So, as any of the people on this panel would attest to, when you're out there doing policy work on almost any aspect of health, you will run into industry conflict of interest, and you have to muster up the courage to tackle that head on.
So, and that's a great question. we still have them over at Case Western. We see them all the time, pizza lunch, and I think those are a lot of there's a lot of individual ethical questions about how you should deal with that, which I think are very interesting, especially if you're a prescribing doctor. But I want to poll the audience. How many of you are aspiring lawyers or lawyers already? Okay, so a couple. Okay, how many of you public health? Like MPH? Okay, awesome. How many of you are medical students or pre-med? Okay, nice. What about nursing? Paula? Okay. Social work? PhD, biomedical sciences. And anyone else I'm missing, yell at me. What was that? Pharmacy, yes, excellent. Great. So sorry, pharmacy. Great. And econ. You have econ? You have econ, okay. Great, so we actually have a wonderful, this is like a wonderful sort of panoply of people. And so I know we'd love to have everybody from each one of those areas up here for you. But I think a lot of us, there's a lot of, I think one of the messages here is that you almost can do everything, just not at the same time. And so we have a lot of, if you do have any questions in terms of, oh, I want to speak to you if you're a pharmacist. I want to speak to you if you're an economist. Come talk to me, or one of us. We'll definitely put you, we'll schedule a Skype session with you. But I want to open it up again for any other questions. I think there's some really excellent stories that there's still waiting to be told. I don't want to just keep talking, so I'll keep telling stories. So more questions. Yes? Yeah, stop it.
So from a biomedical management point of view, how would you recommend it? If I were interested in career in public health, I mean, is the degree in public health important? How do you weigh that in comparison to weighing that real world? And do you actually need a degree? Do you see the benefit in actually pursuing a degree like that as a PhD? Or do you think work like these is good enough to want to invest rather than that degree?
That's a great question. So the part of the story I didn't tell you is actually, so after my PhD, I went, and after my medical, I went back to residency, but I actually had a moment where I realized I wasn't doing it for love, I was doing it for fear. So I actually put that on pause. I'm actually starting a lab at Yale, and it's going to be one of the first biosocial. So it's going to do biology and public health. And one of the things that my mentors have said is, Sonny, you got this MD, you got this PhD, you might need an MPH. And I'm like, are you kidding? Really? You need a... And so the sort of short answer is, I don't know the answer, but I do think you need hard skills. And if you want to be taken seriously in the sort of quantitative public health arena, I think this is really embarrassing, I don't know basic statistics. I don't know basic epi. And you need to be able to go head, like, toe-to-toe with the best economists. If you imagine yourself being at an AGOEG, the WHO, you never want to feel like you don't know what you're talking about. So I don't know if the degree is the right articulation of it, but I think audit a course, take a textbook, like know your stuff, is what I would say. And then I think my firm belief is that credibility is what you do. And so as long as you actually have some contributions in that sense. So I don't know, I'm not convinced you need a degree, but if you feel like you are like me and you don't know statistics, I'm actually auditing a course on statistics at Yale. I think you need to feel like that.
Great. Peter, do you have a comment, a general comment, or do you have a, yeah?
There are 30 questions. But, so, I mean, I think the law students in the room and just sort of general activists and all us tax representatives, it's all about how you argue in the end. And that you got to sort of know enough to represent the truth and figure out what truth is for the thing you're working about, and then find a useful way to make that bit of change happen in the world. So I guess what was really useful, or what continues to be useful about UAM is that we bring in so many skill sets, but I don't think we should all necessarily labor under the pressure of the idea that we have to sort of amass certain degrees. It's like, come here with certain skills already, and UAM is a chance to develop those further and learn about some other skills that other people are developing and figure out how you want to incorporate that. I always thought that part of what was useful in this group is that you have some folks that come in that arrive to UAM basically because they're activists or socially justice conscious already. They've already worked on other campaigns and done some political stuff. And this is a really interesting issue, and they want to figure out maybe they want to get a little deeper on the technical side. You have technical folks who are studying really hard and have never really necessarily figured out how to take on structural laws, which is really its own very deep and broad and complex field. And so I guess if you come in with one or the other of those, I think you have such a perfect opportunity to expand into the other camp. Work on developing that skill set. It's really finding ways to combine these things that leads to that opportunity to have a career that also can contribute usefully to social change. Also, just I guess for both lawyers, and they might be sort of curious what it is. I don't know how much that's going to stuff, but what law folks do. But, I mean, my work in particular, so I was hired to help countries issue compulsory licenses, and it has involved a lot of traveling and working on the ground, not in the political setting, but in the policy and political setting with different agencies, and essentially going over legislative language and figuring out what sort of decree would be needed from what agency in order to start getting generics on market in place of patented drugs and what the royalty terms would be, and so on. And then that's carried over into work with trade agreements, where you get these long arcane texts that no reasonable human could decipher, and deciphering them for the general public and explaining to that effect, essentially a logical framework. What's the consequence going to be for global health? Where is this going to block generic competition and so on? But that's the point at which we essentially hand it off to the public health experts who might do an epidemiological analysis, who might analyze the health system and try and estimate what's the cost burden going to be, what's the health burden going to be, and what's biologic medicine, what isn't, and how does that sort of fit into these discussions. So we continue working together, I think, with those of us on this stage, because we continue to complement each other's skill set as years go by.
Right, any other burning questions up here? Oh, Patsy, yeah.
So, I've been doing this for a long time. Pretty much okay. So, I've been brainwashing a bunch of people for a long time, and telling them how UAM is great and how it has helped me. But I guess it would sound even better if it comes from you guys, particularly if you could address some of the younger folks out here who might be thinking, UAM is too complex. I'm not good at speaking or doing leadership kind of thing. Or, yeah, this is a good organization, but I have a lot to do. I want to focus on my studies. How, if you could address those concerns, and I'm pretty sure you guys have had similar concerns when you were starting with UAM, and how did you convince yourself to stay, with UAM, and yeah, that'd be good.
That's great. Great question. All of these happen. But just to on that one, I think there's two pieces that popped in my mind. One would be, on the question of UAM is complex. Okay, you can say that. But you can actually get to the core of what we're actually fighting for here, right? We're fighting for access to medicines. We want people to be able to afford things that we can afford, essentially. Or maybe we can afford them, and not assuming that everyone here has health insurance. But what I'm trying to get to is that, intellectual property law sounds complex. Developing a drug sounds complex. All these things sound really complex. In fact, let me ask a quick question to everyone in the audience. Who here knows the regular drug development process the FDA goes through? Right, a few of us. But the thing, and everyone listening, but the thing about it is, guess who didn't know anything about that? Who's in a group called ACTA that changed the way that HIV drugs are developed in this country? Most of the people in that advocacy group in the 1990s, when they were telling the FDA and literally writing them a large document, manifesto, saying, look, you can change the way that the FDA approves drugs and get AIDS drugs out so that people can have them, they didn't study, biomedical science PhD. They didn't have a certificate in regulatory affairs. They didn't have law degrees. A lot of the people that were on the front lines of that fight didn't have college degrees. So all of us, as people that are at universities in this place of privilege, learning these things that we can kind of build and tailor into it, we don't have an excuse not to act. I mean, ACT UP did it without any of the tools and knowledge or any of these conferences that we have. So it's kind of just, when we're talking about getting into something that's complex, yeah, let's be honest, we're talking about complex issues. We're talking about changing the world. It's not going to be easy, but it's something we can do. We can do it without being like the most technically wonky people in the world. But that can be fun, as Peter does. It's something that we all have a chance to do something about and really to build into. On the other piece, though, on kind of how you prioritize your life or having time for things, there's some interesting pieces kind of coming from the business world, which I don't like to sample things from that often. But talking about how people say that they're too busy to take on another project, or I'm way too busy, I'm spending all this time at work. And what it really comes down to is that people just have no clue how to prioritize. Right? All of us have taken the time, when I was an undergrad, for instance, as Patrick was working part-time, doing 2 research projects minimum per semester, working at one point teaching a class and also doing UN and coursework. And I think everyone here has a story that's similar to that. We just have a lot of things in your schedule. But it's not that you're just you're here, so you've already proven that you're not too busy for UN. But when you hear other people say that they're too busy for UN, they're too busy to write a letter to the editors, write an op-ed, to attend a meeting, to come to a conference, it's not that they're actually too busy, it's that they have no idea what their priorities are yet. And so kind of working through that, and the same for all of us, is to always try to figure out what speaks to you the most, what really drives you. And go with that, if it's UN, that's awesome. Do it, keep it going, and I hope it is UN for everyone in this room. And then just kind of, that's my priority, how do I get there? What do I do with it? Instead of thinking of it as, how do I fit this in for an hour a week? It's all about how we think about it, and kind of shifting our own perceptions.
So I think one of the biggest challenges for all of us in this room is how to become a larger social movement. UN has been always very good at the technical aspect, and it's been a big part of its draw. So we've drawn a lot of very ambitious students because it's like, wow, I can do something useful in the world and deepen my knowledge, and it's so technical. And that is very useful for certain aspects because we need that in order to develop robust policy solutions. But as Justin suggests, and that's not the part that's going to capture the excitement that's going to inspire millions upon millions of people that we need to really have a popular movement that turns over an entrenched power system in the kind that we're fighting. That sort of requires more dramatic moments and much simpler messages and rallying calls to action. Stop. Health for all, drug prices are too damn high, everyone needs access, the system is broken, and finding ways to dramatize this today. And that's something that, it depends on some portfolios of people in this room, but I think it's something we need to open up more and more of a track in our time to work on the social movement mechanisms, and it's definitely not something for which special degrees are required, but it is something that is hard. It takes time, it takes imagination. So everyone here can feel that they've got a different piece to contribute, but it wouldn't sell us, sell that short either. That's something we actually need to work on. So for those of us who are in the creative activism workshop, I think it's why a big part of why America had the Yes Men coming to open this thing up. We need to think a little bit harder on those dramatic moments. So we've been talking about the examples of the bus boycotts. Rosa Parks was not just some random woman. She was a trained activist. She was professional. And there was concerted thinking about who's going to sit in that chair and how are we going to make sure it gets captured on film in order to drive the civil rights movement forward. And Gandhi didn't march across India to the sea just to make salt, just because he needed salt. It was a very dramatic moment embedded there and some thinking about how to capture people's imagination. So we have to dedicate, I think, a little bit of time to that as well.
Love that. Everything you guys are saying really is resonating. I think it's because we're really part of this UA family and we sort of grew up together. Sunny and I actually have a term for this. We've called this particular thing that you're talking about, Peter, technicism. The idea that you could be a technical expert, or maybe you're not an expert, and you were just reached by an expert like Meredith or Rachel Killen-Monroe or Jamie Love. But you have enough understanding of the technical to know where the truth is, like Peter was saying. And then you go be an activist about it, so you figure out how to make your ideas win. Because the guys propagating the bad ideas, usually industry, not always, they have a lot more money. They can make high-quality, high-powered videos like we saw yesterday afternoon. So how do we make those ideas win? It's technicism, it's being a technocrat who's also an activist. And you pull them together and you have some really highly trained people who join UAEM not as in their full career, they joined when they were students and still very young and idealistic and fiery and willing to fight the man that is right. And I think that's the real specialness of UAEM because we were all sort of incubated in this culture that it can never really be that far from us, no matter what kind of job we have. You can be sitting at a corporate law firm and still be a board member like Virginia was. You know, still be in like a highly tertiary hospital, but we have UAEM.
Perfect. Okay, I get goosebumps listening to all you guys. So I think we've been really good about it, especially earlier in the talk, talking about how UAM has always been there for us. We're here for you. We're looking forward to supporting you in your as you move up and onwards in your own careers. But I also don't want to miss the fact that UAM really needs you. So how many of you have heard about the UAM Alumni Network yet? Or UAM Alumni, or we're working on the UAM Evergreeners. Okay, has anyone been hearing about that a little bit? A couple of you out there. So it's a thing. Some of you are on the listserv already. Some of you are not alumni yet, so you should not be on the listserv already. But I wanted to just, because we had a Hopkins session yesterday, I'm not going to belabor it, but this is a perfect way to highlight that UAM needs you. We will always need you. Go do your passion, do whatever you want, but we'll always need you, and you'll always be able to help us. So, and we'll find you, especially if you join our UAM Evergreeners listserv. But so Hopkins, has a really important drug that UAM is super interested in. We're pushing a drug-specific campaign on, and right then and there we said, Kavitha and Jane Andrews, so Kavi's here in Boston, Jane Andrews is doing her thing in New Orleans, can you get up here ASAP, fly you in and get you a meeting with the president, because we need to talk about this drug campaign ASAP. We need to make sure this drug is not going to be, it's going to be licensed in an effective way. No, we need to get rid of this potential exclusive licensing. And they just blew up. This is the thing. So this could be you too. And we don't know yet how we're going to need you in these ways, but we want you there for us. So don't lose touch. More mundane things that I will touch on that I know we're always going to need you for. This doesn't seem, and I'm mentioning it because I don't think it seems super intuitive to some of you, but all of you are going to go on and do some really interesting things. We have endless ways that we are looking for recruiting of donors. I know that sounds super unsexy, but if you're not even on the board and you're like, hey, this is so-and-so is just sent out a call for applications for a grant. UAM, check it out, let us know. Foundation supporters, letting us know how to pick up the political support of organizations you go into. We have people here right now at this conference who are just talking about, oh, you have a lot of work for so-and-so, so you should go talk to so-and-so about this and this. And this is bringing our professional organizations and making them more interprofessional. And UAMers can be really part of creating a more cross-cultural and cross-professional, interprofessional is the word I was looking for, a more interprofessional conversation. And so that's something that we can all do. And that's how we can all promote UAM regardless of what we end up doing. So I will open the floor until, wait, one maybe last burning question. I have not been notified that we're out of time, but I think we are almost running a little bit over. So we'll open it up to one or two more questions. And then, I think we've got, Sophia. Oh, thanks.
So, one thing you learn about UAM and join is that you really never stop learning, and it's a lifelong type of process where you just keep getting more and more involved. And at the same time, so you like it so much, you know you work with groups and more conference calls, and you're also balancing work at the same time. So I'm just wondering, how do you avoid burnout, and how do you manage your time between UAM and work?
What's your name?
Jennifer, I'm part of the NCC.
Jennifer, I think that's an extremely important question and one that we probably don't ask ourselves enough. And I think that the answer is actually very individualized and personal, and that everyone has to find that for themselves. And I think one part of preventing burnout in the hospital or in the medical world is by having a side gig with UAM or similar organization because it stokes our fire. But I think in terms of just having enough hours in the day and being as resilient as you can be as a person and well-rounded, everybody has a different thing. For me personally, it's yoga and meditation and my family and my dog. I couldn't do without those things, I think. But that answer is different from everyone. So I actually like to ask all of you guys what your answer is as to how you prevent burnout and how you learn it.
I learned it by burning out and then figuring out how to recover from that. It's a very significant danger. Most people in this room already put a lot of pressure on themselves. And if you're looking to compete in this world, there will be people a generation above you who will put a lot of pressure. One of the challenges for young people coming up, certainly in my case, but for most of my peer group that I saw, was how to carve out a role, because you sort of want to move up, work hard, improve yourself, and people set management positions set really difficult, sometimes impossible standards to reach that. Simultaneously, if you always say yes and always do it and never say no, eventually I had to learn how to say no, and I wish I hadn't waited quite so long, and how to figure out how to communicate with supervisors essentially that what they were asking wasn't necessarily realistic or didn't leave us at any time or other avenues to pursue. That's tricky, but it's like in the NGO world anyway, I get the impression it's this way in other worlds. We've got a real cultural reform problem we need to work on. It recognizes that people are more productive over a longer period of time if they have rest and relaxation and can build a good life. And so we kind of all just have to be a part of that as we go along and sort of learning to stand up for ourselves and each other, and then not imposing those same standards on people that come up underneath us. So doing something every day that you love and not skipping for too many. We all go through periods where we have to work very hard, but I did that for 4 or 5 years where I was just all cylinders, and it was a tremendous life mistake. So don't basically don't let that happen.
Yeah, I'll hear Cody, and I think it's a very wise question, and I also learned it by burning out. I think a couple thoughts. When Peter referenced Gandhi earlier, I was thinking of my favorite quote from Gandhi. It was, "You can win the rat race, but then you're still a rat." You can win the rat race, but then you're still a rat. I think this compulsion to do so much in such a little time is very real. I think a lot of people on stage do it, and I know you guys do it. And I think you have to just embrace being vulnerable. And this is something I talked about before, like you just have to embrace that might not know the answer to something about. In terms of the decision making that Covey was prompting us to say, I think I learned that last year, and I was telling you, I actually made a conscious decision and realized that I had agency. It didn't have to be this way. I could sort of make choices. And I committed myself to make the decisions based on the following framework. I call it like H2. The first was all decisions have to maximize my health. Nothing is worth your health And what we do in this room is worldwide. And the grand irony of it is by doing work sometimes that we prefer to do, we ourselves become a patient. No more. The second is happiness. It is really important, and you do your best work when you're the happiest. If you are feeling that, I think a lot of us have the mindset of ego, where we say, like, I can do it, I'm strong. You guys are all very professionals, you're the smartest of the smartest. At some point, something has to give, and you realize that you're truly honest with yourself, you're not happy. And I realize that. The third thing, this is just as important, is honor. You have to honor the work you do. And if you're in a position right now where you're not honoring the work you do, a humble request is that maybe take a moment of reflection and say, are you doing what you're meant to be doing? Is this your duty? Is this your purpose? There's going to be toil and drudgery anywhere. Running an NGO is often painful. There's IRS audits, there's this and that. Being a corporate lawyer, I imagine, is very painful. Being a clinician at a company is very painful. Anything you do in life is going to have drudgery and toil. What will you honor? You do the best that you can. That's why I now make all decisions in my life.
That's awesome. I don't think I'll have answers quite as good as all of you. But for me, when it comes to burning out, it happened to me twice during UAM experiences. Sort of pushing too hard. One was just about graduating senior year in project purposes, and I kind of felt busier for a moment. But what draws you back in, or what drew me back in, was reprioritizing. What's in the way right now? Is it that I'm taking a couple of English classes, which I was putting a lot of work into to try to get this much higher GPA? Was it that I was going to all of these things to try to draw in a large group for UAM, which was part of it at the time, trying to bring in as many people as I could before I graduated? And a couple other things like that. And it really came down to kind of in a very less interesting way than the way Sunny put it, finding your happiness and finding those kind of pieces that you can really connect back to and things like that. I would say the other time was more of kind of midway through like my second year at Yale, while finishing my MPH. It was more of going out from school than it was, it definitely wasn't for me. But that one was an interesting one to get through. For that one, it was more of like finding the light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe the MPH wasn't exactly what I wanted to be doing at the time, but no, it was earlier. It was right after interviewing focuses, and it's your fault either. No, but I'm joking. What really helped with those was to get laughter. Wow, my jokes have gotten bad, but they're terrible. Yeah, no, Paul Peter's great. No, actually, it actually came from talking to people like these guys on the stage, talking to Peter about these issues, about kind of pushing too hard. It really helps kind of draw those things. And the other thing was mentioning the schools is really good. I would say the big thing now is honestly, I snowboard all the time, which is like the thing that keeps me. Hey, you just need something where you turn off your mind just for like a few hours and snowboarding. And the other thing is, now that I probably has enough time, I don't find that I would edit. But that's the other. Awesome. Perfect. So that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I need some advice down. But I think it's worth noting that most of us are here in this room because there are these studies recently talking about what I guess probably the difference between essentially it's like happiness of daily smiles and the pursuit of fulfillment, right? And sort of the real benefits, health benefits of fulfillment and having the vocation and so on over time. I think everyone on the stage will clearly pushed ourselves too hard at times. Because people in the room, we're here because we continue to get a deep sense of purpose and our lives each day by doing that. And there's obviously a lot of ways to fold that into your life, be it sort of full-time professionally in any way, whether it's doing or not, or whether it's something that you do entirely on the side, or whether it's your family, and how we work on that. But to the extent that this is a career panel, and folks in the audience, I suppose, are sort of curious whether this is going to be part of your professional life and how to merge values and advancing your career. I just do think it's important to note that you're doing something very good by being here, because an awful lot of professional outcomes are sort of determined by the communities that we're a part of. And over 10 years, I've watched a lot of people UN conferences and listservs sort of move into different fields doing useful work that picks up on work they're doing outside UN and work they're doing inside. In many cases, includes doors that were open through someone else moving and so on. And we're going to continue to see that unfold far in the future. So, I mean, I think you can feel optimistic about those prospects because essentially we're all kind of creating this world together. Like, we have that job to do, sort of find the funding opportunities, figure out the coalitions we need to build in order to continue providing infrastructure to keep doing this work together deeper and deeper in our careers. And fortunately, we have a very skilled and enthusiastic, passionate, and great, caring group of people to do that with.
All right, so I'm not getting any evil eyes from Meredith, but I think we should probably wrap up pretty soon because we're going to talk about the TPP. It's going to be really exciting. But I want to highlight that the fight for access to medicines and all the things the fight for health, this fight is so long. And I think probably a lot of you are going to be looking out, if I'm lucky enough, looking out 40 years from now and seeing some of your faces hopefully still. This movement is long, and so I think it's important to highlight that we care about the movement, we care about ideas, and sometimes it's always talk about it, but we really care about is the people. And so we're a movement of ideas, but really we're a movement of people, and not to forget that. So I want to just highlight again, and thank you for all of our panelists, and give them a round of applause, please. And I want to highlight that duality, that UAM is always here for you. So my email, like all have it from email me. But email me if you would like. I can be happy to source a particular mentor for you because we have so many. That's what this community is so valuable for. But also the duality of yes, we will continue to give, but also we need you. And this movement will not continue to grow unless we have the political and financial support of you all going forward. And I think that's so important. So it's this beautiful cycle, and we want to continue keeping all of you on our family. And so I'm going to go ahead and panelists will, I think most of them at least will be here for a little while longer, so feel free to approach them individually. But I think we'll go ahead and set up the stage for the TPP talk. All right, thanks. Next is India, not Gray MTP. Sorry.
Ready for showtime?
Yeah.
Huh? What?
That's 2 years in a row. Oh, that's exactly right. So, like, no, you don't have to. It's like your contributions to you. Either chapter, essentially, usually the words basically say, focusing so you want to figure out the
Water with like poetry or something. I love that.
Justin, can you go Chris? I need him to sort this out. Oh, yeah, they are.
Sorry.
Can I ask everyone to sort of come together so we don't look so separate? Just for this, because we've got the last two sessions and they're going to be more intimate anyway. We want it to be more of a dialogue. So if you could come to the front couple of rows, I'd be really grateful. Thank you. Yeah, there you go, front row seats. Could you guys, can you come to the front, please? Okay. So we're going to get started. We have, if you haven't met, Avnish and Madhu from India, well, UN India, and very excited to hear what they've been up to, and hopefully we're going to have more activities next year in conjunction with UN Global.
So hello everyone, and a very warm namaste from UM India. I am Dr. Avnish Deshmukh, and
Hi, namaste everybody. I am Madhu Sajan, and Avnish is a doctor in Institute of Medicine, and I am from Central Drug Institute. I am in second year of my PhD. So Avnish.
we are going to start the presentation. Yeah. We started 2 years back when we joined the UM India. So actually, it's like second anniversary when one of our members, Dr. Aditya Singhal, he came to the UAM North America Congress conference 2 years back. So it's like a second year anniversary for us. So we were four people when we started back in 2013. Me, and Dr. Aditya Singhal, Dr. Aditya Kumar, and Dr. Shikhar. And in the subsequent year, we were able to register 4 chapters in RIMS, Imphal, IGIMS Patna, CDRI Lucknow, and PGI Roda. We also had active members in AIMS New Delhi, Bhubaneswar, and Patna. By the next year, we had 2 more registered chapters in BGMS Ahmedabad, and our latest registered chapter is in Subhati Institute, which is in Meerut, near the National Capital Region. So highlighting about the different, since India is a really big country, the blue stars are active chapters. We have 6 active chapters, and the 2 red stars are chapters in which we have active members. And just highlighting on the fact that our UEM page on UEM India page on Facebook has roughly around 226 members. So we are growing up in India, and so for this we use different tools to recruit and to get more people interested in the issues of media. One of the tools was the UAM Asia survey, which we conducted in 4 colleges, 2 AIMS, AIMS New Delhi, AIMS Bhubaneswar, and CDI and PGIMS. And with this, we were able to spread the word in around 6 chapters and 6 colleges in India. And we currently collaborated with Nepal and Bangladesh, and we are working on a trilateral paper article on regarding the findings of the survey, the Asian survey, and we are in the process of writing a paper on that. And we also conducted a campaign against the US government's pressure on the Indian government to change the Indian laws which make medicine unaffordable. This was conducted in January 2015 in the Central Drug Research Institute in Lucknow. The recent the development in the India thing is we have been invited by the IT Congress and to attend the workshop which is being conducted in December 2015, and with a collaboration with the Open Society Foundation. So in the process of these last 2 years, we had meetings with different other organizations. The most important ones are the MSF, in which we met Shelly Gupta, the deputy head in India. We had meetings in Oxfam International, where we met Malini, who is a program coordinator. And we also were fortunate to meet Mr. Zakir Thomas, who is from the Open Source Drug Discovery, and he is also Indian Revenue Service Joint Director. We also had an opportunity to have a meeting with the Open Access Program Manager, Irina Kuchma, and we also had a Skype meeting, courtesy Merit, with Open Society, Vinay and Ketty. We also have members who were like members of AMSA International. Dr. Aditya Kumar, who was overall chairperson of the AMSA International in 2011, and we are also in talks with students from International Federation of Medical Students Association India and MSAI India. I'd like Mother to take over.
Okay. So last year when I was in View conference, we discussed about the SWOT analysis, which you can use in your area wherever you are. So I tried to identify the strength and weakness in India. You can see this guy, and as we know that India has a booming healthcare industry, and we are providing a low-cost medicine to a lot of people, not only in India but also in different parts of the world, especially in Africa and Asia. It's because of there's a change in government, and present government is kind of supporting government to all, and there is a soon we will have a change in IP policy and change in some access to medicine related stuff. Moreover, we have dedicated members, these 225 members, and there are a lot of students who are actually willingly they want to join us and they want to do something. They are from law background, they are from medicine background, and from biomedical research background. As I'm from biomedical research, I feel like we do work, we do a lot of work for research, but it's like kind of paper-oriented, publication-oriented, and then you get some job and you go some industry. It's like not something which we actually want to do. So we have a lot of members, and as Avnish said, we have in collaboration. We are in collaboration with a lot of organizations previously we mentioned. So, the weakness of our culture lies in the curriculum of graduate studies. There are different MD, PhD, and programs. So, but these programs are very professional in terms of like you just get some good results, high GPA and performance, and then get your job. But there is less support for NGO related stuff, or if you want to do something for society, there will be a different kind of attitude. I have own experience, like when I was discussing with a guy who was in office institute, and I was mentioning about UAM, so he was asking kind of, is this an organization? Was like Sanskrit or ISS is working, like recruiting people and kind of thing. So this is very kind of it shows a difficult. I mean, it's a different attitude for student activism, and we have previously reported like in IIT Madras, the students were involved in some kind of activism, but the office persons of the university or academia, they don't allow students to do something which is very good for our students. Second point is heterogeneous and targeted systems. Corruption is common everywhere, but in India too. It's no need to mention what it can, how it affects us. And another point which is very important is like we are from different backgrounds. As Avnish is from medicine and from biomedical research, and guys from law. We don't have a common platform, and if UAM I think UAM is the only platform like which can unite us, which can make us to do something for our nation. And if you want to go for research, like for drug perspective, it is very difficult at present. We are not developing a lot of drugs. We produce a lot of drugs, but if you go for original and applicable biomedical research, there are less incentives for us. This is due to lack of funding and other issues. So we have planned for coming year. We are in collaboration with different activities across the world. Like at times we support some other incentives like this R&D campaign and other campaigns. And this is importantly we have to do the formation of UAM India board. We are going to prepare a web page for UAM India and some guidance for how students can join. It should be easy for them to. We have different chapters in this Maulana Azad Medical College in New Delhi. We have to prepare. It's in also in Indian Law Institute. I think Avnish will want to say something.
We were in a. We want to be in collaboration with different UM activities which is going around global, such as the A2M week and the R&D campaign. We just got enlightened today by the very nice presentation which we had just now. and so we just got dedicated today to do some the A2M week and the R&D campaign, do something about it in India. And the main target is to form a UAM India board and a web page which will be which can indicate like all the activities which is going on in UAM India and the guidelines. The fact is like the issues are different in America and the issues are different in India. So we have to have meetings with all the people who are actually involved in all the work in India, like the other organizations, and we have to find issues in which we have to focus in India. So that is one of our targets for 2016. And also chapters in New Delhi in Maulana Azad Medical College, which is a premier medical institute in India, and Indian Law Institute. Since law is a very important part of our advocacy and of the work we are doing, so we need people to get included from the law institutes. And for that, Dr. Aditya Kumar, who has some contacts in the law institute, he is going to help us. And the most important part is the IP Congress, being held in December 2015, where we intend to participate, and we also want to interact with the National Law University students who are among the organizers of the IP Congress. We got invited for the workshop of the intellectual property in public health and access to medicines. So we are very excited to be a part of this workshop.
So this is the core team, although there are more than 225 members right now we have. This is from Aditya, me, Avnish, Vakul, so Priyanka, Anuradha, Manish, and last one is Aditya Kumar. So we are trying to get whatever the best we can, and I'm sure like we will do within 1 or 2 years something good. Okay. So thank you guys. Thank you for providing us your questions.
First of all, you said in 2 years you did something good. You guys are already doing something awesome. So that's just wonderful. Thank you so much for coming over here. I just had a question in terms of you mentioned very briefly Narendra Modi coming and getting pressure from the U.S. in terms of intellectual property. Can you speak to anything specific that you guys are thinking about in terms of campaign? That you heard something that you guys are working on, or that really in finding out what that thing that
Actually, this IP, the pressure on IP was like India cannot supply, due to this pressure, cannot supply a lot of generic medicines to other countries like Africa and some other countries. So we conducted a survey. I conducted a survey in Central Drug Institute. We asked some questions like, "What's your opinion, students? What they want?" So majority response of the students was like, "It shouldn't be there because India is making a lot of generics and to save lives of millions of people." But I think if we are opposing this, it is the right thing to do because nobody is there to do it.
And we would definitely like to spread the word to all the other chapters we have, and we would like to bring to their knowledge this fact because most of the people in India are unaware of this fact. So, God bless you. And about the 2-year things, we Indians tend to take pressure on ourselves regarding the time limit. We are always like, this is time limit for this, time limit for that. So I'm not taking pressure on ourselves. But yeah, we would like to first, the thing is ignorance, which is very much in Indian students. Indian medical students are unaware. They are just in a rat race, just to finish their MBBS and just how to get a postgraduate seat and then to proceed in life. So Just we conducted the survey, and most of them were unaware of the the intellectual property, and all the different rights and all the things which is going on. And the difficulties which we are facing in the medical schools is like the curriculum of MBBS is really very hectic and asking in India. So they are not able to give their times to us. And after in the fourth year, final year, they are again in the rat race for the postgraduate examinations. So we are finding ways to motivate those guys, and hopefully we will be successful in that.
I would like to mention a quote it's coming from, the Carl Sagan said, somewhere something incredible is ready to be known. It's not in India, people are not aware of UAM and kind of thing. We are trying to make them known about things. And previously also, I had the happiness thing, Samir, he told me something. So I think in the happiness, there's a quote from some book, Into the Wild. Happiness is only real when shared. Here is a platform where we are sharing everything. So thank you guys.
I remember a couple of years ago when Carolina, Rachel, I, and a couple other UAMers, when we were working on UAM expansion, sort of empowerment, especially in lower and middle income countries. And when we were working on Brazil, the changing the student culture was, well, it still is. It's a hard issue, and simply because the student culture in India, and Brazil, and Nepal, and the rest of the world, other than North America and Europe, is different, right? And we've talked about some possible strategies, and out of those, you guys are the ones who were able to recruit these wonderful people who are dedicated to UAM. Establishing UAM India. I was wondering if you could share any, clever tactics where did you trick some of them into joining UAM, or that could be translated to other regions too.
No, till now the tricks are not. We are not very successful with the tricks. We are trying to bribe them, but I don't think so that's working much. Till now, everything has been personal contact and just goodwill, personal goodwill. So, and I think so. The guys who have been recruited till now, they will be able to, with their goodwill, to spread the word. So it's basically just goodwill which is working till now. And bribery thing, I hope it works.
One more point, if you guys can come India and you can encourage us, that will make a big change. We are kind of people who are more influenced by others. We have some kind of colonization and experience of colonized mindset. So we can be still if you can join us in a conference in December, this is in Delhi, and in some future if we conduct any conference, it's great to us.
Thank you. And they traveled all the way from India just to come this weekend, so that's so this is our final discussion. We would like it to be a dialogue. So I'd like everybody, I know I tried to ask before, to shift to the front a couple of rows, please. That would be helpful. Okay. I think it will make it easier for us to have an intimate conversation. And then we'll get started. everyone. So, thank you for being patient and spending this whole weekend with us. Really appreciate all of you coming here, and it's really inspiring to see and to hear your stories and to see everyone who came through so far. So I just want to say that this conference is really what kind of gives me the fire in my belly to go on for another year. So I hope it's the same for you guys. And one of the things that I was really passionate about over the last couple of years is the trade agreements, TRIPS, and the TPP. So UAM has been involved in TPP since 3 or 4 years now. And just to briefly explain, the TPP is a free trade agreement that's being negotiated between 12 countries. And there's 29 chapters, and only a handful of them really discuss trade issues. The one that we're very concerned about is the IP chapter and the ICS chapter. And so our very esteemed panelists here, who will introduce themselves one by one, and if you guys can just very briefly talk about the TPP and from your perspectives, you have people who work on all in the access to medicines movement, and so if you could just introduce it. So you can go.
I'm Jamie. I work for you.
Hi, I'm Jordan Jarvis. I'm the Executive Director of the Young Professionals Chronic Disease Center.
And I'm Peter, the public citizen, and I'm reading off, right?
And you what?
And I'm starting this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So introduce the TPP, let us know for those who don't what it is.
You did a good job with that. I mean, we care because these trade agreements actually change laws for the member countries, and essentially what's going on is a bargain where developing countries and some of the smaller countries in negotiation are looking for some combination of access to the U.S. market, reduction in tariff rates and things like that, and just the political alliance with the United States. It's really beneficial for a small government where they think it is to have a photo op with President Obama and so on. And trading, asking for these things, and in return, the United States is seeking a great many concessions on behalf, principally of big business groups that have tremendous influence in Washington and have lobbied and pushed the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative and key members of Congress and the White House to support their request to transform other countries' laws in a variety of ways. And sort of lead one that we work on, of course, intellectual property turns out to be totally anti-market and rather not entirely coherent with doctrines of free trade in general. Instead, we're looking to deregulate other countries' economies in some areas and have kind of corporate protectionism under the academic framework in this area, where you say actually what we want is extra strong monopoly protections and the right to protect ourselves from competition in the countries. So a basic request, the United States' basic request is that you're going to change your patent laws, you're going to change these other laws to better protect our pharmaceutical companies, and those governments are going to be responsible for enforcing a number of those measures, leading to reduced generic competition and therefore reduced access to affordable medicines in all the member countries. Now, in the TPP, that includes a series of developing countries like Vietnam, 90 million people, a lot of very significant financial constraints on ability to respond to treatment. Peru, Malaysia, and in the future, potentially more countries, because the idea is that this would be a living agreement and more countries could join and not even necessarily be able to negotiate some of the same safeguards that are there. Some might be even more harmful for countries in the future. But you know, for Peru, where this has been an incredibly live and contentious issue in the media, and there's a very high-profile fight between the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Trade, you can't necessarily pay $50,000 a year for any one person to access breast cancer treatment. I mean, if most individuals aren't going to be able to pay out of pocket, and so those governments are going to have to make decisions. If the monopolies are longer, biotech drug monopolies are longer because of TPP, people have to make certain decisions. Do we buy many more hospital beds, or do we give one person access to this kind of care we need? Province where obviously people's lives are on the line. So it's in this context. I mean, this is, in some ways, it's kind of the defensive part of our collective struggle where we're trying to keep the status quo from getting worse. Companies find it's much easier to change these sort of rules through these negotiations where the negotiations are secret than it is to take on the fights directly in countries' parliaments and congresses. They've been trying to change some of these rules in Chile, for example, for a decade and failed every time. But in the TPP, they might be able to succeed because it's one provision in a document that will probably be 1,000 pages long. And if you're a Chilean legislator, even though you vote against patent linkage time and time again, you might not be able to vote against this entire comprehensive partnership with the most powerful country on earth. So that's essentially what we're up against. Our goal is to take a defensive opportunity and turn it into an opportunity to build a movement and highlight the sort of outrages and atrocities that are being committed, and win over some greater moral support. One, to reduce the harm of any agreement that comes to fruition, but one, to defeat the agreement. So the goal, the continuing goal, is to stop the TPP from taking effect. Two, in the event that it actually does come to fruition, to reduce any harms in the agreement by working with the countries involved and helping them push back against the proposals. But three, to make it into something more, to make a referendum on the kinds of negative rules that are being passed at the behest of the pharmaceutical lobby and envision a more positive future. So 5 years ago or so, we and many of our colleagues started engaging this process in part by just showing up at the negotiating round. But we're not really supposed to be necessarily. There was around Santiago de Chile in early 2010. It was held in this law school, and there are various wings cordoned off. And negotiators all have green or go lanyards, and civil society stakeholders have a scarlet letter kind of read, "You shall not cross this line," and lanyard sort of identifies and walk through the complex. And I was tossed out of one room in particular by USCR that kind of called me out. We're having this panel together. I walked in, nobody stopped me. The USCR guy calls up to the front of the room, being run by the Chileans, and says, "I thought this was only for governments and for negotiators. I think we all are here." He kind of stands up and points in my direction. He's not one of us. But we find other ways to build those alliances by buying folks lunch, by working in the hallways, by waiting and talking to people. We put on a big lunch that particular round for the negotiators just so they could get a chance to hear really different points of view. And most countries showed up and looked on with a certain skepticism, but as they sort of noticed that, okay, some of our interests might be aligned with theirs, and these are issues we'd like to hear more about, that was the beginning of alliance where we were being able to have more and more meetings over time with people from the various countries to the point where they were coming to rely on us quite regularly for information, inputs, and even sort of getting live and near live updates on the negotiating process. Because it turns out we have interests in common, and these negotiations are made up of human beings, and in some cases, very sympathetic negotiators. We're really worried that they are going to have to sign a document at the end of this thing that they, like us, believe is going to hurt and maybe kill some people in their country. They don't want to be responsible for that. So since that time, it's been just a process of getting closer and keeping that trust through a combination of sort of very technical analysis that we incubate here at UAM, learning more and more about the rules until we're able to have incredibly well-educated discussions with folks and provide them ideas they hadn't necessarily thought of. Some of these countries aren't that well-resourced, right? Brunei has like as many people as my hometown. And so they don't necessarily have dedicated experts on certain issues. But if there's a common value basis there, then we can sit down and talk and provide information that they can take straight in. So there's that technical component. By really learning and researching and working hard on the technical aspect, we can move things. But that only works if we build and generate trust, and that comes from handling information with discretion, not divulging information that we're not supposed to divulge, and learning over time. For example, the negotiating dynamics can be really complex. So if you've got, you might have one country with a certain sort of cultural expectation, they're not necessarily supposed to speak up in negotiation. In another country, it's got a different tradition in negotiations and is very vocal. local country doesn't understand why this other country that they think should be supporting them isn't. But it turns out that that's sort of like not in their mandate, but there is agreement. We can sometimes help build that alliance behind closed doors. Support that Jamie and others in this room have done for decades as well, in a variety of forms. That's kind of been the inside game. The outside game is involved, the inside game is involved Wayne and others on the stage as well. But the other component, of course, has been to help the public understand what's at stake in this negotiation. And that means some of the same sort of coalition, alliance building questions that UN faces all the time. Early for us, we sort of noticed that we think we can make access to medicines a real issue here, but on its own, that might not be enough. And so we started talking to tobacco control advocates and helped them to build a list and start organizing, engaging. Tobacco control has a tremendous profile all the way up to the White House. They've been able to negotiate certain concessions in this agreement. And once we're sort of in an integrated conversation with them, then it's easier to argue that this whole thing threatens to be a negotiation against health. We did the same thing with digital rights advocates on a lot of the internet freedom and open access kind of issues. So it's all something we could detail, but I should probably talk about where we are, next steps, and pass it on. Do you want to come back?
We'll come back to that.
Come back. All right. So.
In terms of
Sure. So I wanted to also commend those on the stage who've been working on the TPP and other trade negotiations for many years and fighting for the public interest. I'm fairly new to the space, and it's definitely inspiring to see some of the wins and in the movement and being part of it and seeing that we're all in this together and we're all fighting for the public interest. So I'm going to talk about the TPP from the angle of non-communicable diseases. So non-communicable diseases are cancer, diabetes, chronic respiratory illness, and mental illness in our view. And so these have often been viewed as diseases of the rich and elderly, but that is simply false. They disproportionately impact particularly impoverished populations. 80% of global NCD deaths are in low-middle income countries, and many of these are actually working age individuals, so premature deaths. So the TPP threatens, as Peter said, health in many different ways, and I'm going to outline 3 different ways in which it does that for non-communicable diseases. So the first being access to medicines through strict intellectual property rights, and particularly in relation to biologics. What the TPP outlines is a period of data exclusivity, which is between 5 to 8 years in the current agreement. So what that means is that the clinical trial data will not be open for that period beyond the patent period of these medicines. Biologics are really important, particularly are new and effective cancer medicines, and they will continue to be very important in the treatment of non-communicable diseases more widely. So this is a critical point, and pharma industry likes to put NCDs in a basket of, well, this is for rich countries, and we're just gonna put infectious diseases on the global health priority list, but NCDs, well, we get those too, so it's not a global health priority. Insulin, as we talked about yesterday, for kids with diabetes, it's not a global health priority. They don't need it, right? And that's outrageous. So I think particularly in relation to future access to medicines, not only current access to medicines, this will continue to be a huge issue. Secondly is the trade liberalization allows big corporations to go into new markets and spread what we call risk factor commodities. So those are unhealthy, ultra-processed foods, tobacco, and alcohol. and promote these products in this situation or a country where they were not really a problem before. And so that's where a lot of different industries can work together. And as Peter would say, working with tobacco control advocates is going to be really important as we talk about going forward. But I think some of the actors that, in my view, have been left out of the discussion, maybe also sort of the nutrition folks and food, because there are also huge implications with respect to food growing, access to unhealthy processed foods, and putting local farmers out of business. And the third point is the investor-state dispute settlement mechanism within the TPP that would allow big corporations to sue governments for setting public health regulation and policies. So that happened mainly with Australia setting their clean packaging law for tobacco and being sued by Philip Morris. But this could also happen with big food. There's countries that are looking to increase, for example, regulation of marketing of foods to, unhealthy foods to children. And then what countries face in that instance is so-called regulatory chill, where they feel like they cannot set those policies because they just simply can't face the threat of a lawsuit from a big corporation that has many, or a much larger budget than they do. So that's another issue, is that the TPP impacts the sovereignty of countries to set policies in the interest of public health. And all of these 3 points that I mentioned tie in to work against other public health strategies that have been set. For example, at the WHO, there's or member states have agreed to reduce the burden of non-communicable diseases by 25% by the year 2025. So this is the big goal that we've all set. And to do that, WHO recommends that they, change salt content, change the marketing of foods, more tobacco control efforts, and then also expanding access to medicines. But if countries can't actually implement those policies, make medicines more available, restrict unhealthy foods, then how are countries going to reach this goal that has been set? And so that's sort of the question that we've been faced with. And so I guess going forward, I think that we also need to talk about this a bit more. But one thing that I would like to emphasize is that a lot of people, I think in the broader global public health space, don't really understand trade at all. And I think we can do more to communicate more broadly about the implications and what it means.
Thank you.
So if you can just explain from AI's perspective, what AI
I wanted to first by just ask people in the audience, well, I guess can't answer what individually, but do you feel like you know very much about the TPP? Because it's been reported in the press and reported in this organization. And kind of know there. Is that a yes? Or? So I think maybe some do, and maybe a lot of people are less familiar with the details anyhow.
Yeah, there are people who probably need that you could give example two people in there.
How about a haiku? The whole, it stands for transatlantic, so to say, so PAC means partnership. Means alliance. And alliance means everybody plays on the same rules as on board. So how long is this partnership?
perpetuity, it's forever.
It's forever,
So the sun explodes.
We'll open the comments to the end, but, so how many people are not very familiar with?
You know, you can do it in one thing. You let me talk, just keep the microphone for a while, let me see if I can help me out. How many people here have been a member of Congress or a member of the government or written something about the TPP? That's pretty impressive. Probably about a little less than half, but not much less than half. For the people that just want to know some of the basics, I think because Peter described a lot of what it's like to negotiate. And I mean, you're trying to influence on the ground. There weren't that many people that were really able to do that. And Peter and his colleague and other people, Public Citizens, one of the groups, NSF was another group. We had people at most, but not all, the negotiations. There were not a lot of people that could afford. It's expensive to go to these operations. But just in terms of the basics, one of the issues is the intellectual property rights that are associated with the evidence that a drug is safe and effective. They call that the test data issue. And it was the main thing that the press reported on. They really confused the issue in the popular press because they confused patents and this test data thing quite a bit. So they talked about the monopoly on biologic drugs. They were talking really about the monopoly on the data that you can use to establish a drug is safe and effective. And some other regulatory issues associated with that. And so there's all this issue about 12 years, 8 years, 5 years, and stuff like that. You probably read about in the press. That was completely separate from the patent. That's the issue of if somebody does a clinical trial, including like the NIH, but it could also be a private company, and it's been published in JAMA or some publication, how many years is it that you are not allowed to make even a reference to it if you apply for an opportunity to sell like a rival drug? So that was one very controversial. And one of the reasons it's really controversial is it's not required by the WTO that you do that. And not all countries in the world do that. The U.S. has been pushing this for some time. And the companies like it because it's a mandatory monopoly that even if you don't have a patent, even if you don't bother to file a patent, and it would apply to every member of the country that signs up to the agreement after their transition period extends. And it doesn't start running until the drug is registered in your country. So if the drug is registered here, but it's not registered there, if you're a developing country, it's often not registered right first in your country. That's going to come later. So the period of the monopoly can be longer than that. One of the other problems is that for a lot of countries that have implemented these rules, they don't have any exceptions for like a compulsory license. You can break a patent and you can allow somebody else to do it. But these test data things, most countries that have implemented forgot about the part of the exceptions. They just have to write without the exceptions. That's true of a class of intellectual property rights called sui generis rights. Those are rights that they're not patents, they're not trademarks, they're not copyrights. They're sort of more famous intellectual property right. There's something that somebody just ginned up on their own, and they call it a sui generis right. And it's just something kind of made up. And what typically happens is that in the beginning of an intellectual property right system, everybody thinks about the rights and how important they are. And then over time, people realize that the rights create problems, and they start creating these exceptions to the problem. So the exceptions evolve over time, and the older the intellectual property right, the more likely you have is a large number of exceptions or a fairly well-defined path for exceptions. Well, for test data, because it's a new thing, countries really haven't addressed the exceptions thing, so it's even, in some cases, it'll be a bigger problem for people than a patent will be. Since there's like 20 different issues, and I've got like 7 minutes left, so I'm going to like target a lot of things. But one of the issues was to link the test data, the patent status with the drug registration in developing countries, or everywhere actually. And that was a good outcome for our side. That ended up working out pretty well because the language is pretty weak on location. Or, it was like surprisingly good in the TPP. patent extensions was a bad outcome for our side, because everybody has these obligations to extend patents beyond 40 years. That was something that's not in the WTO, it's in this agreement. Whether or not you have to grant a patent or not is something that was changed in the agreement, but not as bad as it could have been. They wanted to do things that pushed it further, the fight was over how many patents you have to give on an old drug or an existing drug. That's really what people were fighting about the text. And there's some obligations, and they're to do that, but they're not as extensive as the worst proposal. And the compulsory licenses, whether you can grant a compulsory license what the standard is, I think that was a good outcome in the sense that it protected the flexibilities of the WTO agreement. That wasn't true like 6 months ago. It was sort of fixed in Maui, and I feel very good about that. It was we were really worried about it 6 months ago, and then it was really bad result at the end. So I don't want to just, what we don't know, which is I think probably one of the most important things, we don't know whether these things, how they fit with the investor-state thing, whether private companies can sue to interpret them. And that'll really be consequential. The government has been, two governments, Australia and the United States, have been briefing people that investor taking does not apply to intellectual property rights. We think that's probably wrong, but we haven't seen the text. And we don't really know what happened at Atlanta. Maybe here's where I said that I do. But it's our impression that intellectual property is a covered asset in the agreement, and there's a limited carve-out for exceptions. But it's problematic. But we just have to wait to see the text. So the bottom line is, the agreement is not as bad. The close was not very good for pharma. That said, they got quite a bit, and a lot of things to make our prices. So we're going to work with Public Citizen and with the Jordan's Group and everyone else, MSF, AARP. I hope they come out of it. Yes, all labor unions, maybe the Tea Party, to try to stop this thing. So, and I encourage you to do that too. I think that. See where I am. 9 minutes right now. 7 minutes. So, just give me a couple minutes more close. I would like to just say that one of the things that I think you have to ask yourself is why do you have agreement after agreement where the United States is pushing to have higher drug prices? Because what you have is not what the U.S. asked for. What the U.S. asked for was radically more aggressive than this. And what is happening this week on the WTO, the U.S. is trying to block a permanent waiver of drug patents for least developed countries, which is a morally reprehensible position for the U.S. to take. And we're involved in all kinds of negotiations all the time. Why is it policymakers that want prices high when the public wants prices low? And why is it that there's this gap between the people you elect to represent you, and maybe not just the people in this room, but a lot of people who think would be better policy. And I think there's a corruption issue that, like Larry Lassie and other people would focus on, which is a big issue about all the money that goes into politics and in the revolving door. That's an obvious thing. And then the second issue is it's almost like a policy analysis thing, where it's a public relations thing. It's a perception that high prices are good for jobs and for the U.S. And I think that some of the things we're finding out that the innovation argument that high price is good for innovation, which you think would be the standard argument, is not really as persuasive as you might think of policymakers. But the job argument, which they rarely talk about, or not as often, is probably what they believe more sincerely. So I think that when you think about going future and think about reforms, you have to think about replacing bad agreements with good agreements. When you think about replacing bad agreements with good agreements, you have to answer the question of policymakers. How do you do it in such a way that they can perceive that you will have the opportunity at high-paying jobs, and other people have the opportunity at high-paying jobs if you dismantle this anti-consumer system that we have right now and replace it with something else? How will that thing also protect the opportunity for people to have good-paying jobs in the value-added sector of biomedicine, most of it?
Thank you. So if Peter, you can speak to the current state of what's going on with this agreement and what has happened in the last few months. and any battles that were won by the access to medicine teams, the Stop PPP campaigns, and all these things.
So in Atlanta, just a couple of weeks ago, unfortunately, the TPP negotiations, the 12 countries officially announced the conclusions of negotiations. They announced essentially that all the big disputes have been resolved by the negotiators. They're not the legislators, mind you, not the people who are going to vote on it, people that have been working on the closed secret text all this time. They don't actually have a text yet. They say we expect them to publish it sometime soon. They have to go through this quite intricate legal review that takes a little bit of time. I don't think they quite know when it's going to be done yet. But so at that point, there'll be a period of review by all the various governments, estimating costs and benefits in their agencies, studying the text. And we can all study the text. And there'll be a period for Congress to review the text. And then there'll be a vote in the U.S. Congress sometime next year, probably. At least the supporters of the agreement will push for that. They're going to run into some very difficult territory because it's not a popular vote to take in the presidential election year. Especially with the current politics in the Democratic Party, and really Hillary Clinton coming out against the agreement is a bellwether. It indicates to us that serious, moderate people are going to be more critical than once would have been expected. And frankly, that's a little bit of a victory that I think we can all claim as well. You'll notice that Hillary in her PBS remarks specifically noted the access to medicine problem as one of the reasons that she's critical of the agreement. So we have to work. They're basically, well, let's take stock of the outcomes so far briefly. First, access to medicines delayed the close of this negotiation for years. It was something no one expected. It became one of the most contentious issues in the entire negotiation. There were long periods of time where all countries were united against the proposal being advanced by the U.S. Trade Representative in the pharmaceutical industry. There was a moment where the U.S. Trade Representative put a paper down on the table to be discussed, and no one in the room spoke a word for an hour, which was their way of saying, we don't want to talk about that toxic piece of trash that you just put in front of us. And this was a very difficult situation for the pharmaceutical industry to be in, and access to medicines was one of 3 issues that led to a meltdown of the ministerial in Maui over the summer. And then through very intense lobbying and incredibly intense discussions, they were able to pull out an 11th-hour conclusion in Atlanta. They thought that would be a 2-day ministerial. It took 5. The Australian minister and the U.S. Trade Representative stared each other down in 10 separate meetings in 2.5 days. And there were many, many calls from USTR to the pharmaceutical executives and from the White House to heads of state and other countries. And I'm very sorry to say, from the Secretary of Health and Human Services in the United States, to her counterparts in other countries, telling them you need to sign this text is going to raise the drug prices, which is not something that a Secretary of Health should be doing, right? But so it did turn into a referendum on the old model. We wound up, because of how contentious this was, sort of free market libertarians like the Cato Institute got to thinking, this weird monopoly way of organizing our pharmaceutical economy is compromising the entire free trade agenda. We might not get this thing, which is what we're trying to do on drugs. And then The Economist, which is sort of the staple magazine of the neoliberal establishment, started writing more and more features between that and some of the trolls issues that Sam and others here work on, getting much more critical of the intellectual property system in general. And the Vatican weighed in, by the way, with some excellent comments about the importance of access to medicines and what trade agreements do to them. So I think collectively, between this and other issues, we've been able to significantly elevate the profile of access to medicines and the IP disputes internationally. And that's a good thing that we can work on capitalizing on in the future. It's drawn into significant doubt whether the way the system is structured does anybody any real good. Lastly, through the negative provisions that were knocked out, those negotiators, and including some very brave people who are putting their careers on the line, saved lives. It's very difficult to calculate how many, you have to sort of project into the future and think about markets that haven't developed yet, but they save lives. They took real risks to do it, and the world will sort of never know their worth of what they did, but I think it's important to take stock of that and recognize that a lot of people in this room and a lot of our friends around the world put into that process to help give them what they needed to take that stand, and that's important. Now, all that said, we have a really, really terrible agreement that's going to be put before our Congresses and Parliaments. There was never any possibility of a good Trans-Pacific partnership negotiated this way because it was about how much big business could get. It's not like there was ever sort of a period of comment about how we're going to achieve the Millennium Development Goals or anything else like that. This is an exchange goods and services with U.S. big business and all the incredible amounts of money that the pharmaceutical lobby spends in Washington leaning on the U.S. government to get everything that it can. As Jamie says, they got a lot of it. They got a lot of it. So we have to figure out how we're going to beat this thing. And it's a lot less about the inside game or the technical game that some of us can play. There's still some role for that. There'll still be some opportunities to provide those kinds of comments. But really, we need a transformative political moment. And that's the conversation that we need folks in this room to have. There are basically two things that we can do. One is target and work on and lobby and change the minds of, well, this is in the United States, but this is really true for all countries. In the United States, it's those members of Congress that voted for what's called fast track legislation, but might be able to change their mind on TPP, or people that voted against it and might go the other way. So there's a certain limited number of swing votes that we can target in a congressional strategy. But underpinning all of that in a more basic way is widespread critical outrage and dramatic moments that help everybody, push everybody over the line. And the signal that, there are, I think, a lot of signals that we can do it. One is just how far this negotiation's been pushed already. But another really is the Democratic presidential contest right now, to some degree the Republican contest as well. But Hillary Clinton is a very serious politician. She doesn't come out with a position like that unless she or King sort of thought through the implications and where her core of support stands. So we have some bird dogging experts in the room, Paul Davis, that met you. We can talk about presidential election strategy, how we're going to target candidates, how we're going to push them to hold this line. We can talk about the congressional races and votes. But this sort of goes to the whole social movement discussion, I think. How do we create a moment of outrage that says we're not going to be, we don't want to be responsible for our government putting these rules in place that are going to cost people their lives around the world. That's just not okay. So I should hold it there, but it sort of takes all this talking to get to that point in the conversation, right? You want to emphasize that that's the most important part of the conversation. It's what we say after that that gets us where we need to go.
Right, and I agree with what Peter just said. I think we should try and keep agreement. It is important that there's two presidential candidates that now come out against the agreement, and including probably the person most likely to get the nomination for the Democrats, which would be even though and I'll be voting for Curry, but so I'm sure. You can never tell us about the way people cast the votes. But I mean, the fact that both Hillary and Bernie have opposed to it, and Trump has been very negative on it. He's leading the Republican thing. I think there is that. And so, there'll be this effort. Sometimes when you get to this point, the agreement is not as bad as it was before. And so, you can find cases where the administration will come back and they'll say to people, well, you were exaggerating before how bad the agreement would be. And no one was really exaggerating anything. The agreement was that bad. It's just like they didn't get all the bad things they wanted. And one thing I want to bring up though is that ACTA was defeated in the European Parliament. The ACTA was a similar thing. It started out really aggressive and really quite bad. Before it closed, it became, because of a lot of lobbying that was done in the thing, it became a better agreement toward the end than it was at the beginning. It was still a bad agreement, but it was not nearly as bad. And a lot of the things, the most objectionable, disappeared toward the end. And so then the European Parliament became debated after it wasn't even taken to the U.S. Congress. The European Parliament had a chance to vote on it. And in that debate, people were searching around for the things that were still really objectionable, I think, and there were some. But it was the secrecy that surrounded the negotiations that was the most damning thing in European political. It was the illegitimacy of the process. You have a case here where you got 600 or so corporate lobbyists that are allowed to seek current versions of the text and have input, and you're not. And then whenever our side working off leaks, often they're not the most contemporary, the latest versions of the text, and you may have to wait some cases a year between leaks and things like that. And when people, even when they learn from things, negotiators will show you things sometimes, and you're not allowed to talk about them. And so then the broader public can't have a debate on it. Or if you raise the issue, it's not considered legitimate by people because they'll say, well, how do you know that's true? Or USTR says it's wrong, or it's your word versus their word, and you're the government, and there's someone that can't even produce the text and show it to somebody. So it's really designed to make our side weaker and the other side thing. And I just find it incredible that you can have these kind of negotiations where it's not even really a secret negotiation because, of course, all the countries in negotiation have the text, and all the corporate lobbyists have the text. So who's the secret from? I mean, it's not secret from special interest. The way you get to see the text is your special interest. That gives you a green light for the text. If you're a public interest group, you don't get to see the text. Or even if you get to see the text, you have a gag around you. You go to jail if you talk about what was in it. So that's not very helpful either from our point of view. So I think that the transparency issue can be one of the grounds which you can really go after and try to kill this thing. You should say that there should never be an agreement that's negotiated in this way, which is legitimized and approved. The outcome, which as bad as it is, was shaped because of this lack of transparency. Some of these provisions that are not fixed in the agreement are not fixed because there's no real open debate on it. So I would just say the transparency issue is something that we think is critical.
And the others also worked on this too, right?
So lead into my next question. So UAM has done a lot of work on this along with the broader coalition. UAM students, along with the leadership, Pratik, Justin, and before us, Ben Flink, Ben Flink. But more recently, for example, with regards to Fast Track, our students in the United States have met with Chris Murphy at Yale, and Dave Camp when he was with Ways and Means. And so, as students, as the youth, as the professionals of tomorrow, that was kind of our angle. We were able to get meetings with them and their staffers and all these things, and then share our comments and whatnot. So these are the kinds of things that we were able to do, and then act at our universities as well, whether it be with the administration or just bring about awareness with the students and the broader constituency of the community, a little outside of the university. So I want to make this a bit more interactive, and perhaps if we can discuss the next steps and what we can do, and if US students have questions for our panelists. So I would like to open the floor and what we can do next. If you guys have ideas, I really want this to be a roundtable discussion.
Yeah, ideas. Crazier the better.
Yeah. First question is, the presidential elections are in November of 2016, right? They're in November of 2016. Don't you think that the administration will try to pass the before November of 2016?
Yeah, certainly.
Presidential strategy will necessarily work. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're trying to get it.
You must get it done before he's no longer the president of the United States.
That's December 2016.
It's not clear that it will be easy for them to do it during the election cycle in general because candidates feel pressure from their core constituencies, including labor and environmental interests and us, not necessarily to vote for the agreement. So one thing we're actually a little bit concerned about is that they push the vote all the way until after the election, when a little bit of the pressure is off, and try and sneak it in what they call the lame duck session between the time of the elections and the time the new crop takes office. So that's a danger. I mean, they will, they'll push it earlier if they can find it in their interests.
There's a web page called tppcoalition.org, and it's the coalition for the TPP. And you should just look at the members of that that coalition at the bottom of the page, and then you ask yourself, I'm not saying it's all 500 firms on the Fortune 500 list, but it's compared to the ones who are famous and trade associations. So if you read that list, you reflect upon who's on that list, and those companies are going to push very hard to get this thing through. The Washington Post, because Jeff Bezos was it. The Amazon wants it because of the electronic commerce provisions in it, and the sort of market access thing that he perceives for them are important. They're going to pound away at it in favor of at least the editorial board. It's going to be extremely difficult. I think that what's going to happen is the labor union is going to have to depend upon the sort of right wing of the House of Representatives to help them out on this. So it's going to be basically a weird coalition of Donald Trump, the Tea Party, labor unions, the environmentalists, the consumer groups, other citizens coalitions, and things like that. And this, it's going to be kind of a totally odd coalition of people.
To add to that, so there was a tobacco carve-out in the TPP, which means that tobacco was exempted from, there were built-in protections for governments to enact tobacco control measures so that they wouldn't be sued by tobacco corporations. And I read an article this past week that big tobacco is now against the TPP. So it's interesting they're against it because they can't sue governments. So maybe, we can do some sort of...
Someone has to bird dog.
Yeah. Follow up on the yes man situation. Follow up on the yes man situation from yesterday and thank Big Tobacco for maybe helping to put out the TPP.
Is there another question? This is going to be a huge political issue in 2016. So we see it in the news.
Do you think that the major issues being pushed so hard is because approximately the past four or so presidencies there's been a major trade agreement signed?
I'm sorry?
Do you think this is being pushed so hard right now because over the past like four or so presidencies there's been major trade agreements signed?
As in, this would be the first one Obama would sign?
Right, so that'd be like something he could hold in like his legacy, be like, oh, well, I signed a major trade agreement. Like,
Yeah, in the interest, should we get like a couple of questions or ideas?
Okay. So that's, I don't think so. As I understand it, the other countries
In this partnership are supposed to be budding markets. It's obviously citizens in that country are getting rich enough to be viable markets for these corporations to extend their business is what is the issue here, including consumer products. And so the timing of the partnership is due to that. It's simply that people in these countries, Vietnam, other ones as I scroll, Japan, China, nope, sorry. They're simply getting rich enough to do business with. Is this correct?
Well, I'm just trying to get
yeah.
I kind of have a sort of maybe a naive question. Well, first of all, thank you all for working on it for years and years. So the TPPD happened about 2 weeks ago, right? And Australia posed on, especially on biologics, lowering the number of bad exclusivity from 12 years to 5, right? And then a few days later, Australia came in opposition to the LDC waiver for the ship's LDC waiver. And I'm like, I would like to believe that Australian representatives made that decision for pushing down the number of data exclusivity, the number of years from 12 to 5, that they did it from an ethical point of view, putting their ethical hat on, but at the same time they just rip it away and then I don't know, it's just my problem.
Well, we were speaking about allies and you said, what do you attack those things? But a good one, in this regard. And you were also speaking about kind of far out ideas of the successes of the net neutrality movement in protecting the internet and its freedoms. Have any allies been sought out with them? And I know this is a funny question, but can anyone reach Anonymous? Anonymous, the hacker group.
So I'll just quickly summarize. So if you can speak to why was this agreement signed out? Is it because of the legacy that Obama wants to leave, or is it due to markets? And with regards to the negotiators, those who are actually negotiating, why is it that sometimes they put their ethical hat on, and then for other things it seems that they're being cognitively dissonant? So, and then the final one was how we partnered up with more internet allies. So, yet that Anonymous reached out to all those active groups, and how do we kind of harness that?
I'll just answer your anonymous question, because I was contacted, I think several years ago by some guy claiming to be some insider with Anonymous. Almost certainly he's guy with a cop, so I'll just tell you that. The net neutrality thing is, we really haven't seen the whole agreement. It's like 30 chapters. And intellectual property things are what EFF groups are sort of reacting to right now, the takedown issues and stuff, which are going to be worse for some countries. I think worse for Canada, and the copyright term extension to 7 years, and the open campaign. I wouldn't count on that to stop the agreement myself, personally. It's unlikely that you'll see Google go after it like they did. Or you remember when Wikipedia shut down or anything like that. I don't think you're going to see that kind of thing on this agreement, because I think that Google felt they got things in the agreement that they were happy about on the e-commerce side, which we haven't, the data flow side that we haven't seen. And certainly on the intellectual property, they have certain kinds of accommodations, so I kind of would count on that for this agreement. And I would also say that the library's analysis is coming out as more favorable than I would give the agreement in terms of the analysis that they're releasing. So I think on the copyright thing, I just don't see that they carry a lot of influence.
So why signing now? Was it because of the market?
LGC, are the Australian company? Yeah, because it certainly would not be ethical to say protect the Australian market at the expense of 1 billion people who make less than $1,000 a year. I don't think that would be. You wouldn't call that unethical, but you'd call it the opposite, right? You'd never be like that if they did that. I would be, even today, I would be kind of shocked if that's what Australia did. I'm not saying they didn't do it, but I would find that really surprising if they made that kind of deal. But other people raise that question about Canada and Australia acting on the United States on the LDC thing, if that's some kind of residual thing for the TPP. And again, I was kind of shocked. I think Canada is a fairly conservative government in power right now, and they may just be based on that.
Find out tomorrow if if the DP government wins, then they might get rid of the TPP.
I think this year, I think many people, why the Obama administration has thrown so many elbows and worked so hard for this particular deal. And all we can really do is speculate and answer that question. Trade agreements have come to be seen as a part of cementing the foreign policy legacy, particularly in this administration. They're seen as a part of the foreign policy pivot or rebalance, I guess it's now called, right, to Asia and sort of the economic arm of all the diplomatic and military questions. We think that's a tremendous mistake, of course, and there's been a couple good op-eds on that point, sort of show that beating up on your allies and leaning on them for 5 years to do things that they don't actually want to do is not a great way to strengthen diplomatic relations, which is what the TPP has come to look like to many of us. But they're very complex political concerns in that. And correspondingly, countries in the negotiations, they're defending. The Australian trade minister may or may not personally believe in the position that they're taking. But the point is that people in this room and in other rooms have held their feet to the fire and made sure that they can only go so far in a negotiation like this. And if they don't cross that line in the TPP, but they do in the LDC discussion, that might mean that we need to bring more attention to the LDC discussion. So we just need to generally amp up scrutiny and critical concern about what our governments are doing on behalf of companies, which again is where I'd like to bring this back. I'm really hungry to hear ideas and thoughts from you guys about intervention points to sort of dramatize this thing in a tough year. All Davis.
Hi, it's really simple. And whenever we can make anything other than simple, then it's a kind of a waste of time and a mistake. There's a bad trade agreement that's going to drive up costs of medicine for people in poor countries who are sick and vulnerable, and drive up costs of medicine for people in rich countries who are sick and vulnerable. So there are only two places to intervene. One is the presidential candidates, and the priority now should be defined by one of the grown-up Republicans to say that this agreement is bad. That changes that. What Secretary Clinton is changing her opinion because of duress from primary voters. What that does is very effectively puts us all the way into a lane down session post-election. But it will still probably pass unless we do two things. One is get a grown-up Republican to be opposed to it, not just believing in us. And the other is to sway about 3 dozen members of the House and Senate, the ones who voted the wrong way. And the makeup changes ever so slightly. Some of the right-wing crazies who object to fast track on principle, that's a constitutional taking to give away our right to govern interstate commerce. We give it to this guy who's not even an American. It's like those Tea Partiers will come back on board, or some of them can come back on board, so we have fewer. It's a different base. On the other hand, it'll be closer. It'll be right after the election, where the Republicans may very well have won the presidency, but they will probably be losing a number of Senate seats. So they'll have a very short window of time to push this through. It won't be a surprise, and a lot of people will be able to go out and they're retired, they've lost their seats, so it doesn't hurt them to have this sort of bad news. So we should be looking at the 3 dozen or so members of the House and Senate who have to be converted, 4 dozen, and we have to work on getting a direct answer from Republican candidates. Senator Rubio, Obama trade is this horrible agreement to kill American jobs, and it's going to drive up the cost of medicine for my grandmother as well as for the poor and sick that God tells us we care about around the world. And you can't. Are you going to help stand up to President Obama and repeal the horrible parts of this agreement and protect the rights of my grandmother and people with HIV around the world that have medicine they need to stay alive? Or are you going to be an axe murderer of orphan families? You have to do that about 150,000 times. I had to pull out a pebbles on the scale, and then, but there's, and we have to do those things that nobody else is doing, right? And the reason why we have TPP is because the American labor movement is developing rapidly from growth. We have, nobody can state this, nobody can stop this but us. We can be looking at other groups and hoping for the best, but actually we have to take responsibility to do the two simple things that we need to do, which is to go and peel off one grown-up Republican candidate and about 3 dozen original houses.
Can we identify those blocks? The politicians. Which of the politicians do we know oppose?
Yeah.
Have opposed it?
Right, so I mean, question about who voted where and how we can get a target list of folks that are going to work on this. That's all that is being thought about very seriously by serious people in Washington. And I mean, what Paul says is true, right, that we have to take responsibility. We're also not alone. There are going to be a lot of people working on this in a very serious way. And in the end, it might not be several dozen. It might be if we can turn a few and others can turn others, we get there. It's like it's not insurmountable, but it requires. So and it's like one, we can target the members, right? But two, we can just sort of increase the drama of this whole debate and really attention getting ways such as interrupting a presidential announcement speech as some people have done before. But this issue adds so much moral authority to the entire debate. All the sort of environmental and labor groups and others that are working on it, will stand up and say, "Oh yeah, and people are going to die because they're not." And that's true. People are going to die if this agreement goes through. That makes it harder to fight forward.
Mama trade soaps to taxpayers and makes medicine unavailable to my grandmother.
In the United States, it doesn't change U.S. law too much in the United States. It does create risks and things, but they're really hard to explain to people. It does make some of the things more challenging than the lower prices. But I mean, compared to where the tax goes up a year ago, it's much harder to sell that into it will be in the U.S. audience. I think that the developing country thing is a pretty strong argument, but it's a great position in the United States. It's a tougher argument because by Canada and Australia negotiating down closer to their asks, it's just I just don't think it's as compelling as a story.
UAE is going to keep working on this, right?
Oh, yeah.
I know
Someone
Paul's got
will.
some partners that are going to be working on this, and we're going to be working on this. We need a forum for sort of further discussion about how we transform this operation now from this sort of very wonky thing that it's kind of been in some circles to a very serious moment.
We have all this youth here that's so much energy, and they're all trained up already on CDP, so they're gonna go forward with this. I have a lot of faith in them. I was just going to put, if anyone's interested in working on this, the best person to talk to right now would either be Justin or Jan, just to get you connected. So if there's anybody right here before you leave, please do that. Otherwise, you can reach out to all of us.
Basically, can you imagine going to visit one lobby, like going and doing two things on one politician between like now and a year and a half from now? Can you do like two things? One is like probably a boring lobby visit, and another is some kind of stunt. Like that's nobody else can do this for us. But if you can imagine like that low level of stuff, that makes a big difference.
Lobby visits count.
And if anyone has any students who are interested in global health in DC, please don't come talk to us, because that's where I'll help them, because Congress is definitely.
I just want to amend President Paul over it. And I think that when we see a tax on the investor statement, I might revise that. To the extent that they companies can sue federal government and Medicare or litigate whether or not tax or grant stuff like that. That's going to happen. I mean, I think people are unsettled by the idea of the investor state mechanism in general. I think that's a vulnerable area, and it's
That's long as star chambers.
It's really a bad idea to do that, allow private companies to try and enforce the trade agreement. And I think that the extent that medicines are covered in it, but like I say, we really haven't seen that. The protection really not helping.
So just then to summarize very briefly, next steps moving forward is going to be to get students to essentially, so in the next couple weeks we'll be to get the presidential candidates on both sides talking about this, putting this in the media, and making sure that there are serious candidates talking about this. And to try to get, and then eventually when it does come before Congress and the Senate and all this, hopefully not, but during the lame duck sessions, that will be a point where students are going to have to meet with their congressmen, meet with their governors, and all the people that we can influence, and hopefully not get this passed, or at least try to slow it down and not make it as bad as it can be. And then I just want to, and then we can also rally under the banner of transparency as like a broader issue that we can bring up. And to end on a positive note, and it's just to kind of take stock of everything that we've done in the last year and say, you know what, we did, bring the biologics down from 12 to 5 to 3, and then we did, if you have time like that, I would keep them. Very, very quickly.
How difficult would it be for us to change the paradigm if we talk about SDS and all that? It's like a...
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, that fight's going to continue either way. I mean, the bigger sort of building a new R&D system, that does not ultimately hinder one. Obviously, if TPP goes into effect, it's worse. But we're going to be having a lot of those same conversations either way. I mean, this matters in two ways. One, people are going to suffer if it goes through. They're going to have better lives if it doesn't. Two, if we defeat the thing, we've helped a bunch of countries create a certain degree of political independence from the industry lobbies that are leaning on them. And that changes the political equation. That makes it easier for us going forward to push through the next set of reforms and live in a slightly different world in terms of the power structure. This is going to, there is something for everybody in this fight over the coming year and the other fights, right? You can write an op-ed if that's your thing. You work on creative action if that's your thing. You can visit people in Congress or in Parliament, target some of these key individuals. If you're from their district, they're going to listen in a different kind of way. It can be very important, and it's just one signature campaign. I'm not trying to elevate it over the others, but I think that it's an area, this is a chance for us to think kind of in a sharper political way than some of us might be accustomed to sort of investigate the question, what does it really take to take a massive political issue and turn it over?
I guess that was a great summary. So thank you very much to our panelists, and thank you all for staying.
I will ask the mic on. Oh, there you go. Meredith has the mic. Meredith has the floor. Thank you all. Thank you. That concludes our weekend together. I just wanted to say thank you all, the hardcore journalists who stayed, right? And I know most of you sit at the front, but we appreciate it. Yeah, this is just the beginning. For anyone who's new, please reach out to the people you talked to this weekend, and please stay in touch. the CC will be reaching out to you as well. Really excited about what's happened this weekend, and I can't thank you all enough for just all your hard work and dedication, allies of course included, and just for spending the weekend with us and not rowing or other things. So, thank you, and if you do see these posters and things, and just any rubbish, if you wouldn't mind just popping it in the bin on the way out. That sounded very British suddenly, sorry. But thank you so much, stay in touch, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but keep the faith, so see you soon.
Yeah.